Well, I'm back home again. Absolutely fantastic trip to Canberra. An enormous amount of progress has been made, and I think we've had a significant impact. But what are the issues today? Well, Australia has hit $1 billion of debt. That's $27 billion, $27.7 billion per year. Now, this is a significant issue. Australia is going down exactly the same pathway as Victoria. High debt load, no productivity, nothing produced. The fast-track renewable build, which is driving energy prices higher, is only driving industry out of Australia and household energy prices higher. This is absolutely not right. There must be a total rethink. We must do it better. Australia can do so much better. We are the lucky country. What we don't have is good bloody politicians. So good politicians would run a sensible budget for future generations. High debt load and ever-increasing interest is going to be a burden on future Australians. It's not intergenerational fairness. This is intergenerational unfairness. This must change. We must have sensible economic policy, and we must have a sensible energy policy for Australia. Really pleased that Jess Wilson in Victoria's deciding to scrap the VNI West and WRL. Absolutely awesome. I think that's a great move. For the hosts of wind projects or solar projects, they're now got this big conundrum. Are they going to vote Green or Labor to try and save their projects? I think this is a massive issue for these hosts. These hosts have got themselves in a position now where someone has hold over their title that's very, very, very unlikely to occur. I keep on saying we need a proper process. As soon as someone puts a caveat hold on your title, you should be getting 3 to 5% of the economic value, the market value of that land. The hold by a caveat is a significant economic burden. There is no proper process. The government has been out to try and extract from farmers things that they have no value on, which have a commercial value. I think this must change. We've got to have a proper process. All the hosts that have a caveat on their title should be paid 3 to 5% of market value for that caveat hold. And the potential of them to sell it to someone from Wuhan or Mumbai is right on the horizon. Wind developers have got to be looking very shaky financially, and who eventually will hold those caveats is going to be a very big question. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day. It's Ross Johns here from the Wimmera Mallee Environmental and Agricultural Protection Association. Enjoying home. Thank you. Bye.
Tarwyn Park training allows you to understand how this landscape functioned long before any human interference. So we spend our time teaching people how to read the landscape, understand the functions that used to exist, and then implementing soft works that enable that function to operate again, whilst we overlay it with our production systems, whatever they may be. And for everybody that might be different, maybe cropping, maybe grazing, maybe horticulture, all sorts of different things. It's more about getting the landscape to function so that these production systems work very well.
The biggest benefit of Tarwyn Park training is getting people out in their landscape, looking at where that they can improve things, where they can look at slowing flows of water because it's so desperately needed everywhere.
Tarwyn Park training teaches you the 5 pillars of natural sequence farming so that you can use them to restore your landscape. They are slow the flow, let all plants grow, care for where the animals go, filtration is a must know, and return it to the top to recycle the lot.
Each of the 5 pillars of natural sequence farming have a practical application out in the landscape, and in our Tarwyn Park training we teach people how to put that into practice on their landscape.
Slowing the flow in action could include practical applications such as contours and hill ponds and gully ponds, which all act to slow the flow of water and fertility moving across the landscape and promote it being stored under the surface where plants can access it more readily and it's not being lost to our rivers and creeks and eventually to the ocean or evaporation from the sun.
When I'm building a contour, I use an excavator, and using an excavator I'm able to sculpt the bank to the height that I want it to be, as well as making sure that it's the right level and make sure the spillways are put in the correct location for it to function the best way properly.
Let all plants grow means that we want to focus on diversity, and as much diversity as possible, as all plants growing, no matter what they are, fill 5 key roles for our landscape, and they include solar powered air conditioners, moisture magnets, processing factories, soil builders and pumps.
One of my favourite things to see is when I go out in the paddock, I'm able to see the change that happens, the new plants that come in, as well as trying to figure out why they're there and what the job is they're trying to do.
Pillar number 3 for Tarwyn Park training is careful where the animals go. And behind that is about understanding that we need to manage our animals in a way that suits both them for a production focus for our farm, but also an ecological focus and ensuring that they are looking after the landscape and not causing it any undue issues.
When I'm being careful where the animals go, I'm making sure that whatever stock it is in the correct paddock for the right amount of time, make sure they're not affecting the land in a negative way, as well as that I want to make sure the animals are always happy and they have the best place to be, and happy animals make me happy.
Pillar number 4 is filtration is a must-know. Filtration is an extremely important process of our landscape.
The aim with filtration is to make sure that when your water is moving through the landscape, that it's clean and that everything that's flowing through it is being absorbed by the plants, all the minerals and different things like that. And the aim is that when you see that water flowing across your property, it's usually better to drink it because it's perfectly clean.
Pillar number 5 is return to the top to recycle the lot. But the big thing is about collecting fertility that's moved down, taking it back up to the top and putting it there to break down and then feed it all back down. So rather than letting everything be lost, we're actually letting it recycle over and over again, which is how nature always operated, and we're just getting that started all over again.
Return to the top to recycle a lot is cutting and carting hay from the bottom to the top, animals grazing and then pooping again back at the top of the system, and pumping water that's been moved down to the bottom through the system back to the top to be recycled again.
I think it's really important that we work on our Australian landscapes. As a mum with children, it gives me great hope that there is a great future and things can be moving forward and getting better right across the country.
You can get going with natural sequence farming by going onto the Tarwyn Park training website. You can sign up to a 4-day course. We also have our upcoming online courses, and there will be a community for people to join that have done one of those trainings. So you can learn with other like-minded people.
Wet and stormy in the west and very windy for Tasmania tomorrow. Ilana here from the BOM with your national weather forecast for this weekend, Saturday the 22nd and Sunday the 23rd of August. Now there's plenty to look at for Saturday's weather chart. Out west we can see a low pressure system and trough moving in, bringing plenty of shower and thunderstorm activity to Western Australia. We also have some lingering cloud and showers through Central Australia as well as through the east, though this is on an easing trend. And further south we have a very strong cold front moving through Tasmania, bringing very windy conditions as well as some showers and cold air. So let's now take a look at each state, and we'll start in Queensland, where tomorrow morning we will see fog through inland parts of the east. Now we have this area here of lingering shower activity through the southern interior. However, this is on an easing trend throughout the day. We'll also see some isolated shower activity along parts of the coast tomorrow. Elsewhere though, it will be mostly dry. For Brisbane itself, it will be cloudy with a top of 23. For New South Wales, this lingering shower activity will continue in the northeast, with the possibility of some storms along the coast as well. It will be more settled inland with areas of fog and frost tomorrow morning, and just the chance of some isolated shower activity in the far south. For Sydney tomorrow, it will be sunny with a top of 23 degrees, and for Canberra, we'll have a frosty start, then a sunny day with a top of 18. For Victoria tomorrow, we'll see fog through northern parts tomorrow morning. Now we do have this cold front passing through to the south. That is going to bring an increase in cloud and shower activity to parts of the state, particularly about our southern exposed coasts, where it could also be a little bit windy. For Melbourne tomorrow, we'll see 16 degrees, a partly cloudy day, and the possibility of a shower throughout the day. It is going to be a very windy start to the day for Tasmania, with a strong cold front passing through. Now we have issued a severe weather warning for damaging wind gusts starting in that overnight period. Now we could be looking at gusts up to 100 kilometres per hour for the west and northeast in that early morning period, and then extending to parts of the centre, including the Midlands and up towards the Western Tiers later in the morning period before easing later in the day. This system will also bring some shower activity, particularly in the west, a little bit lighter in the east, and with it some cool air as well, so we could be looking at some small hail in the south and some snow down to around 1100 metres. For Hobart tomorrow, we'll see 12 degrees with some possible morning showers. For South Australia, it is looking like a more settled day with this high pressure system, bringing some morning fog in the south. There are a couple of areas which could still see some showers though tomorrow, including in the far northwest, as well as in the southeast. For Adelaide, we could see a morning shower, then it will clear up with a top of 17 degrees. In Western Australia, we have this low pressure system and trough moving onshore. Now that is being assisted by a trough in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That means that we're really looking at an increase in cloud, shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow, impacting much of inland Western Australia, extending to parts of the west coast, as well as further east towards central Australia. Now later in the day, this rainfall activity will extend further south, impacting northern and eastern parts of the southwest land division. For Perth tomorrow, it will be a dry start. We'll get to a top of 23 degrees, but there is the possibility of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. Looking at the Northern Territory now, in the south through central Australia, we do have this area of lingering cloud and shower activity, bringing some cooler conditions. But up north, another typical dry season day. Darwin will see 33 degrees and sunshine. Let's now take a bit of a look into Sunday, where we're still continuing to watch this low pressure system and trough. That is going to continue to bring enhanced rainfall and thunderstorm activity to eastern parts of Western Australia, and then moving more so into the Northern Territory and South Australia. In the east, a high pressure system will bring settled conditions to many, with areas of morning fog and frost, but we are still looking at some coastal showers for parts of New South Wales and Queensland. Let's take a look across our capitals. For Brisbane and Sydney, we'll see mild days with the possibility of a shower or two. For Canberra, Hobart, Melbourne and Adelaide, we're looking at dry, partly cloudy conditions with temperatures in the mid to high teens. Out west, Perth will see a mostly fine day with a top of 20, and sunshine will continue up north, 33 degrees for Darwin. For Alice Springs, we will see those showers starting to move in, so it could be a bit of a wet day. We'll see 25 degrees. That's all for our national weather forecast. If you'd like some more information, please visit us at the Bureau's website, app or social media. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.
Australians are paying more and getting less.
Energy security is economic security. Economic security is national security.
We sit on vast reserves of coal, oil and gas, but we are not fuel secure.
Policy unmoored from physics and economic reality has turned an energy-rich land into a decadent state.
No sector is being asked to bear more than agriculture and regional communities.
We are willfully turning a rich nation into a poorer one.
To keep Australia prosperous, sovereign and free is our duty, and in an uncertain world, our best defence.
From England's green and rolling hills to Australia's dusty plains, our stories ride on faithful hearts through sunshine, wind and rain. The Brumbies run where legends live, where freedom still belongs. Across the seas our voices rise, together we are strong. We're Brumbies strong, we're riding on from Britain to Australia's dawn. With every hoof upon the land we'll stand together hand in hand forever. every colt and every mare. We'll lift them up with love and care. Queen Camilla, hear our song, help keep the Brumbies running strong. There's a Palomino Madigai, proud and free, golden in the morning light, a living piece of history, still fighting for the right to roam the mountains, cross the streams, beneath the southern sky. Don't let these noble spirits fade, don't let their story die. We're Brumbies strong, we're riding on from Britain to Australia's dawn. With every hoof upon the land, we'll stand together hand in hand. For every colt and every mare, we'll lift them up with love and care. Queen Camilla, hear our song, help keep the Brumbies running strong. No border keeps compassion still, no ocean stops a prayer. When people stand for something right, there's always hope to share. The heritage we save today will live for years to come. So let the Brumbies lead the way beneath Australia's sun. We're Brumbies strong, we're riding on. Across the world our hearts are one. From London's light to mountain skies, we'll never let their spirit die. For every child who dreams they'll see the wild horse running proud and free. Queen Camilla, hear our plea, help save Australia's heritage. We're Brumbies strong, forever free.
And welcome back to the Pulse. We're just getting things organised here because a couple of things went haywire, came in late, and so I'm sort of running backwards very quickly. By the way, it's nice to have your company. It's a Friday. I'm just going to pull up something here just to play this in a tick for our instant polls. I just want to remind you that this is our brand new rebranding, I suppose you would say. Used to be the Country Telegraph. We are on Facebook and other socials, and they will change very shortly to the Pulse. So when you go to the Country Telegraph, one day it's just not going to be there. It will be the Pulse. So just to make sure that we get all things organised. Now, I think I'm organised here. We'll soon find out. If you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with your frontline staff, and gather valuable data from your most important resource, that's your employees, then visit instantpolls.online to learn more. Now, this week's poll is your thoughts on One Nation as the leading Australian political party. Just use the QR code on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA. It's a short week, and the result will be broadcast on the Pulse after 4 o'clock next Monday. Now, the link will also be published on our Facebook page, and share the link and ask your family and friends to participate.
Management was deciding in the dark. We lacked a method to hear from people across the organisation. We started using instant polls under our brand. Their expert design templates made it effortless to ask the right questions of the people who matter most, our frontline teams. We've seen improved profits and happier staff, and we now make better company decisions thanks to instant polls. Join us. Try your first free poll at instantpolls.online.
You're with Mike Ryan. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back. Tarwyn Park is a 1,500-acre property in Bylong, the celebrated home of natural sequence farming pioneered by Peter Andrews. Now, natural sequence farming is now internationally recognised as a significant innovation in sustainable agriculture and land care. And the story of Tarwyn Park has featured on the ABC program Australian Story on 4 occasions. Now, we've spoken to Peter Andrews and the current director of Tarwyn Park Training, Stuart Andrews, the son who has educated many landholders in natural sequence farming. Today, we're going to talk to a 3rd generation, it's fresh out of nappies, well, maybe not, Hamish and Lachlan Andrews, who are also involved in the business. First of all, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Oh, we're not there. We're going to have to go back to me for 1 second because it's just one of those first up things. So I'm just trying to bring this in here, and there we are. Look at that. It all works. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. And don't you love Fridays?
Yeah, always a good day of the week.
Yeah, that's going to do some brain damage tonight.
Probably not. Got to work again tomorrow. We're on a farm.
What a bugger that is. Anyway, same here. I have to work, but I'm a bit older, so I can be naughty if I want to. So from what you have learned and seen, because you've got some great educators, your dad and also your grandpa, what are your thoughts on the need for land improvement in Australia?
Yeah, well, I suppose we probably have a little way to go. Obviously, I would have said that the regen ag movement, I suppose if that's what you want to group what we're part of as, is definitely moving forward, and there's more and more people interested in it, both from a farming perspective and also a customer perspective after good quality food. But I think we still have a long way to go. We've got a lot more people that the message needs to get sent out to, and a lot more on-ground action. But that's just the way things are when you're trying to create change. Nothing happens overnight.
Tell me about the benefits of natural sequence farming. I mean, I know what they are, and I think it's a future of farming, and so do many others around the country. What about the benefits, though, for landowners?
Well, benefits are obviously the big ones that we talk about is getting your landscape to function like it once did. So better managing the water, particularly rainfall that we receive. So what we like to talk about is by managing our water, we can be, longer before we get into the effects of a drought, say, and faster to get out once the rain does come. So that's one obvious benefit, is managing water and holding more of it. But you'll also obviously see production gains from that, being able to run potentially more livestock in your farming operation. And then you're playing a part in better managing our climate as a whole, particularly the small water cycle, and having more water flowing through the system for longer. And it takes time, and then they build upon one another. But at the end of the day, there's environmental and ecological benefits on one perspective, and then from a farming sense, production benefits for your business too.
Tell me about, because when you're, I grew up on the land. My dad, he was a very proud farmer. I was a terrible farmer. I probably could have done with your help, or your dad's help anyway, gone to school with him. But I'm just thinking, when you explain this to, farmers are once they agree with what you're saying, they're right behind you. But to get them over the line, it can be difficult. When you explain this to farmers, those that have been on the land since Adam was a boy, what sort of resistance do you get, and how do you get around that?
You always get resistance, I suppose. It sort of depends where they are on their journey. So obviously everyone has a certain part of their journey that they're in terms of being ready to take this sort of knowledge on. And we've learned over the years that you really have to wait. Unfortunately, which is sort of fits with the results don't happen overnight, is that you need people who are willing and interested to actually take the information on. You can't force feed anything. It's like kids and vegetables. With information and new knowledge, the person who's listening has to be prepared that they're ready to listen. And that may take a number of years from first hearing before they actually move forward to the situation where they're actually ready to start implementing. So a combination of not forcing it on everyone, and two, just really being able to visually show them, which is the benefits behind NSF, is the fact that everything is quite visual. So you can go out into a landscape and show them exactly what it is that you're talking about, and then they'll, that makes complete sense. Why haven't I been thinking about it? Which is a lot of stuff we do in the training course, is making mini demos both on a sort of micro scale, but also going out in the landscape and showing them so their own eyes can see what it is that you're talking about, and they can put two and two together.
Let's go to both of you. Tell us what your roles are in the company.
In Tarwyn Park training. Well, I'm still in the training stages, so I'm not. I do a little bit of stuff on the machine and landscape work on people's properties, but I'm myself still learning. So maybe in future I'll start doing a lot of the training stuff, but for now I'm just a machinery operator.
And then for myself, I do a bit of the background organising, but also am doing more of the presenting these days. So obviously we also work at Forage Farms, which is our other business where we produce food. So spending our time split between those, and then in the training, a little bit of the on-ground stuff, and then Tarwyn Park Training recently launched our online course this year, which I developed and undertake most of the teaching in that aspect as well.
I've got to ask you, who's scarier, your grandfather or your dad?
Grandfather,
yeah.
I can imagine dinner time would be like, because I presume you sit around the table at times and have dinner or backyard barbie or whatever. When I grew up, which I haven't grown up apparently, but it'd be like going to school, because Dad would be at the head of the table and he'd be asking all these questions because he was a really smart guy. He did tell some fibs, of course, which we caught him out, but we didn't tell him that because he would have belted us. But the dinner table was always terrifying because he'd be asking questions. Is that the same with you guys? Do you get, like, as you're eating your broccoli or whatever, and you get pinged these questions, and if you don't get those right, is there a raised eyebrow, like, I've taught you not well?
Probably not so much these days. I think it's probably even playing field, but growing up there was probably a few, especially with PA. He liked bringing up questions, and then we had absolutely no idea how we were supposed to answer them, so we just skirted around and hoped we'd make it through. But obviously over time, as our knowledge has grown, we're a little bit better these days at answering those questions.
It's an amazing living on the land is absolutely brilliant, but can be quite tough, and I always found it was tougher with my dad. You got a great grandfather. I mean, not a great grandfather, but he's a great person. And your dad is second to none. He's just brilliant. The future of farming, in my opinion, is what you're doing. What about resistance from the upper management of government? I mean, because government's really nuts, and you probably see it yourself. And I know you have to be a bit careful, but it must be frustrating because this is the start of your life, and you would continue to do this. You would, your father would hope, your grandpa would hope, and you would hope that this is what you'll be doing in 20 or 30 or 40 years' time. The pushback from establishment, does it concern you?
I suppose there's that challenge, but a lot of what we're doing is trying to show how you can actually do it. So we want to make sure that what we're doing both in the training and in the farm is actually able to show to government what we can do when we start to think differently about the things that we're doing. So I think that's a big part of it. So it's about working with the system, but also trying to provide examples of how we can do things differently. And then I suppose a lot of it's from like a ground up approach. PA for a long time, he worked towards trying to get government to change, and the results for that have been slow. So Tarwyn Park Training, in a way, is now focused on how can we get farmers thinking different and start getting them to take it on board. And a sort of masses type scenario, if you get more and more people on board, then eventually government sees it as that maybe this is the way forward and we should look into it a little bit more, rather than trying to get them to change first. Because as we know, government are generally the last to make any changes in our society today, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's incredible. Could you, somebody just wrote in, tell us about Forage Farms. So tell us about it.
Lachie, you want to explain what we do?
Yeah, so Forage Farms is our business in southeast Queensland. And here at Forage Farms, our main produce is layer hens, raised out in the pasture, so they live 24/7 from the moment they arrive here to the moment they leave in the paddock. And we also have pork raised the same way, and cattle, which are grass-fed for beef. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty full-on business, but yeah, it's pretty simple, really. It's just we're doing things a little bit different.
Yeah, simple but different. Most of our food, particularly what you would deem more conventional or shedded type products. So your eggs, chicken and pork. Most of that pork in particular, 95% of Australia's pork is grown in a shed, where ours is grown out in the paddock. So it's already that, but then it's above what most people would deem free range, because free range in today's world is really just a big shed with an open door that they can go out to. Sometimes our birds are out moving around on pasture all the time, ensuring there's recovery behind. And then the other part of forage farms that's a bit different to most others is that, particularly for the eggs at the moment, we're starting to work with other local farmers in our area. So now Forage Farms has got 4 farmers in total, including us, that are growing eggs to then supply to our market in the southeast corner of Queensland. So rather than scaling our business, buying more land and producing more food, we're replicating it. How can we copy and paste our model onto other farms, supporting them by paying them for a quality product, and in return they're giving us a quality product so that we can feed more people in our local community.
Absolutely brilliant. Where do you see the future of natural sequence farming?
Well, I'd like to see it that it gets taken up more and more, which I think I know that over the few years that I've been working in the business, we're seeing it be taken up by more and more people, especially with the release of the online course. It's been interesting, the spectrum of people taking up from small backyard type or very small land holdings through to bigger ones, plus international interest. So yeah, at the start of our journeys, we're only really just getting started. I think there's a huge amount of potential to see it not only taken up more in Australia, but also around the world is our aim. But, small steps one at a time, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. They are small steps, but I think you guys, you got the best teachers on the entire planet, and don't tell your dad that to go to his head. But you have you guys are amazing, and I have to say, I tip my hat off to you. One day we'll pop out there with their cameras and do a couple of shows from there, so that you can show me what you like on a barbecue.
Surely, welcome anytime.
Yeah, we often, because we have Bunnings here. Bunnings. I mean, who cares about what they sell? It's the sausage sizzles on a Saturday morning. I mean, they're just magnificent. So if you can replicate that, let me tell you, I'd be a very happy person, and a couple of red wines to wash it down.
I can assure you my sausages will be better as well. So,
well, we'll have to have a competition, you see. It's not a complicated process, is it? If somebody wants to find out more about what you guys do, how do they do that?
Yeah, check out either of the websites, so tarwynparktraining.com.au or foragefarms.com.au. Same sort of thing on all the social channels. That's the best way. Come and see what we do.
Absolutely brilliant. I appreciate your time. Hamish and Lachlan Andrews there. By the way, do you follow AFL football?
No, not so much the AFL, no. Rugby union.
And I was just thinking, oh my God, I was just thinking what great guys you were.
Oh, we're in the northern states. We're not down in the south.
Yeah, but you got the Sydney Swans. Oh, maybe you haven't anymore, but they're in a pile of trouble. They should.
I probably shouldn't say that now, but if I do follow a team in the AFL, it is the Swans. But yeah, they're not doing so well in the news at the moment.
Yeah, just follow their football exploits and nothing else. Otherwise, you'll be clipping around the ears. Look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll do more of these, and look forward to catching you up for a sausage. Take care. This is The Pulse.
So many places where they're using 1080 poison baits.
Yeah, it's an absolute travesty, mate.
It really is.
1080 baits, if you've seen what a 1080 bait does to a dog, it's one of the most horrific things you'll ever witness. And the second you see something like that, you'll be a big advocate for getting rid of 1080 baits. It's not the way to solve the problem with wild dogs and foxes and things like that.
On Sunday, August the 30th, I got a phone call from my husband. I wasn't here, I was out in Aramac staying with family. And he rang me very distressed and crying on the phone and told me that Tippy was dead. And he then described to me how that happened. He said he was inside, heard Tippy outside yelping, which progressively went and rapidly went to screaming, and he was thrashing him, throwing himself around. He went under my car, which is parked on the veranda in a carport, threw himself under the car and up under the wheel arch, obviously looking for sanctuary. Greg tried to grab him and got hold of his leg, and as he did that, he just dropped dead. So he rang me and told me about this, so I was obviously quite distraught as well. And then he had to go into town, into Bundaberg, to pick up for a pre-arranged appointment. And when he came home a couple of hours later, Faye, our Maremma dog, was also dead. So within a couple of hours, we're not sure, any time between 9:30 and midday is when she died on that morning. So yeah, Greg took them to bury them, and and he took Ted with him when he buried these two dogs, and Ted was there with him. And after Greg finished burying them, he wouldn't leave. He just laid, he sat, moved around. He wouldn't leave the gravesite. So Greg had to literally pick him up and take him away. So he knew his mates were in there. So yeah, sorry.
1080 is not a humane poison, and despite people's claims that it is humane, we now recognise that that's not the case. It's not good enough to pretend to ourselves that it's humane and keep on doing the same old thing that we've been doing for years. There's no excuse to keep on using a poison that is not humane and that we know is not humane.
A hoax about carbon dioxide in the climate has caused a global energy and economic disaster. Today's News Talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back to The Pulse. Stephen Tripp is President of Australians for Better Government, Vice President of Let's Rethink Renewables, and host of the Emmy Award-winning show As He Smiles, Commanding the Narrative podcast. And we're going to talk to Stephen today about what's happening in politics. Now he has limited time, so I'll have to speak really quickly. And what piques his interest, what sort of is floating around the ether. Going to also talk about his current projects. I saw that he was on the road at 4:30 in the morning the other day on a Saturday. Saturday is a day of rest, not for Stephen. And also he's got a brand new show starting with us here on The Pulse. Stephen Tripp, greetings and salutations.
How you going, Mike? Good to see you again, mate.
Good. What were you doing up at 4:30? Actually, you're up earlier because you're on the road at 4:30. What the hell are you doing? Stop it. You make me feel guilty.
Well, so I work night shift, and so I worked Friday night, and as I finished work at 4:30, I had to catch a flight, the first flight out to Brisbane. So it was a 6 a.m. flight. So that Saturday, I didn't sleep that day. We had an event at the Gympie Bowls Club for Australians for Better Government that night, and on the way there, we also did a tour of the Lake Barumba pumped hydro project that they're proposing, and spoke to some locals there. And then the very next day, on the Sunday, we did a tour of the South Burnett and Wide Bay regions, which has been described as a war of the worlds scenario, with all the wind turbines and solar projects out there. So speaking to locals, hearing what their thoughts are on the impacts of renewable projects on their communities. So it was a big weekend.
It was. How did you feel on Sunday?
Well, luckily I got some sleep Saturday night. I don't even remember my head hitting the pillow, so I was out before. As soon as I saw the bed, I think I fell asleep right then and there. So I was okay on the Sunday. Saturday was a bit more of a struggle, but these are the things that you have to do, and that's why I filmed every part of it. The footage is up now at commandingthenarrative.com because I wanted to show that people that are active in the political space that are not politicians. I mean, I've got a full-time job. I go out and do this on my own bat. It's not a glamorous lifestyle. You know, you think flying up to Queensland would be glamorous. I'd get to go to the beach and things like that and do some sightseeing. There was none of that. It was all work, and it was about highlighting the locals there, because mainstream media is not covering it. And as I said to one of the locals, this is a news story. How you guys are getting treated and what you're having to put up with is a big news story. They've got concerns about road safety and water and different things. It's not being covered, and it's up to, I guess, us, Mike, as part of the independent media to cover these stories, because the ABC's not interested, The Guardian, even News 24 are not out there covering this stuff.
And neither is many of the independent media outlets either. They're not doing it. They sort of like, because we have now the leader, the one who we have to, that's King Carl. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go back into Carl at the moment because I'll wait. But Carl, I mean, people have short memories. That's all I can say. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, then we have, who else do we have? We got Avi Yemeni. That's his three brothers, by the way. But they're also, you know, it's amazing the influence these people have. And I mean, and we'll talk about it during the week, I would think, the influence they have on, say, One Nation. And I see Pauline, I was talking to Jen about it today, about Pauline. She's trying to do a Trump almost, and getting the right media on her side. What's your thoughts on her banning some of the media outlets? Because we haven't got that many free-to-air, you know, media outlets in this country. And if you ban one or two of those, you haven't got many left. And even though she's got Avi Yemeni, or with Rebel News helping to provide the information, you're only speaking to a very small audience. So what's your thoughts on her alienating those terrible, I mean, they are, the free-to-air or the legacy media, or whatever you want to call them, aren't all that special in under any circumstance, but you don't want to, you know, cut off your main, you know, the most of Australia, because Avi Yemeni hasn't got that.
Well, look, it's the sorry state of our media. I mean, the media is very, very important. It should be the fourth pillar of our whole society. I mean, it should be holding government to an account in an unbiased way, but things have become so partisan, especially the ABC. I think that's a big disappointment. The ABC should be impartial, and it's not. It's. I mean, if I get contacted by the ABC, I think in the back of my mind, where's the hit job coming? And it's the same with The Guardian. And look, it's the same with many of the media outlets these days. They've all got an agenda. Instead of just covering the news as it is, they're trying to put forward, in my opinion, propaganda. So look, I mean, is Pauline Hanson banning the ABC and The Guardian and platforms like that? I mean, I guess in an idealistic world you would say that's wrong, because you would want to speak to as many media outlets as you possibly can. And look, there's people that consume the ABC and The Guardian who may vote for Pauline, so she's stopping those people hearing her message. But you've got to understand, put it into the context of being in the political space for 30 years and what she's copped over that time, and the amount of times that the ABC and The Guardian and other outlets have done hit jobs on her. You probably understand why she's come to that conclusion. So look, I mean, I think we need to look at the media landscape, especially the ABC. I think the charter of the ABC needs to be looked at, and we need to get back to impartial media and impartial media coverage, because it's become more like entertainment now. Everyone's got a different slant. Avi's got his views, Carl's got his views, I've got my views as well. And I mean, when we were out in the Wide Bay area in South Burnett, I was trying to ask honest questions, but obviously there's some political bias that does come through. But the ABC is just not up to the task. I mean, I want to talk about this when I launched my show on your platform on Tuesday, when we recently saw Anthony Fauci in the Senate hearing, and he pleaded the fifth 111 times in response to questions on the COVID pandemic and the COVID period. You would think that was a huge story and it should be covered. Well, when I went to look at it on the ABC, I had to scroll down and count 36 stories that were ahead of that one on the very day that it happened, and some of the stories that were ahead of it were stupid. Like one of the stories was that a library book in New South Wales had been returned after 150 years. Now, how is that news compared to what we saw with Anthony Fauci? So I mean, I don't know how to reform it. I mean,
but it is
it's
news.
up to the viewer to decide. But
I mean, but the fine that they got for 150 years, they had to sell the house and the neighbourhood.
That's right. It's just laughable. It's laughable stuff. I mean, there were other stories that were just as laughable, you know, about talking about endangered snails and stuff like that, instead of talking about a massive story that impacted all of us. I mean, the direction of our premiers and our health officials really came down to the guidance that Anthony Fauci was giving, and that should all be held accountable. And the media should be holding politicians and also heads of the department like Anthony Fauci, they should be holding them to account instead of just pushing forward their agendas.
Yeah, it's that will never happen. And with the saying that Anthony Fauci might get a year in jail because he's not answering anything. Having said that, that won't happen. And if Anthony Fauci just zips his lips, which he is, there'll be no one held accountable for the repulsive actions they took against their own citizens. Speaking about repulsive actions, I have to say that Angus and his mob of squibs and the coalition, they passed, also helped pass the ASIO bill. Just quickly, because I know you're pushed for time, and I'm not going to make you run out there screaming because you're late. But tell me, just succinctly, tell me what your thoughts are on the ASIO bill and what it does to us.
Well, what voter out there is asking for it? I can't think of one voter out there in Australia that is asking for this legislation to be pushed through. And it is the case with so much of the legislation that's pushed through Parliament. Now, who's asking for a digital ID? Who is asking for under 16s to be banned from social media? Who's asking for misinformation and disinformation laws? It's only the politicians and the lobbyists. Who's asking for brumbies to be culled from helicopters in our national parks? It's coming from non-government organisations, lobbyists, and those sorts of groups that are driving the policy in this country. So that we need to build some accountability into our system. We should have mechanisms where we can veto legislations, like a system like citizens initiated veto. If the government wants to push through these ASIO rules, then it should be held to scrutiny by the public. They don't take these things to elections, by the way. They just push them through after elections. So we need to, instead of focusing on the ASIO bill as concerning as it might be, we need to start looking at the structural side of things and try and introduce mechanisms that can help the Australian people protect ourselves from legislation like this. We need way more safeguards in this country to protect ourselves from these politicians. And you've got Liberal and Labor that often on side, they push through this stuff without ever consulting the Australian people, and we don't have a choice at the ballot box when you're voting for those two parties. And I think that's probably explains the rise of One Nation. People are just jack of it. They think, okay, well, you guys are not representing us. You're not giving us an option, and we're going to look elsewhere. So it's understandable. Well, I didn't believe it in the beginning, the rise of One Nation. It seemed a bit fishy to me. I guess I'm coming around to understanding it more. But when you look at legislation like the ASIO bill, and you've got basically the Liberals supporting it, bar Alex Antic, he was the only one that spoke out against it, and hats off to him. You've really got to scratch your head on whether or not the Liberal Party, who should be about individual freedom, is really representing the views of the people it's meant to represent.
Okay, you have to go. I know that somebody wants to find out more about the Oscar-winning podcast. You're just going up. You see, United Nations are going to knight you with something.
Mate,
how horrible that would be. I'd quit if they gave me an award. But tell us how we can watch your podcast, and tell us when you start here on the Pulse, and all sorts of other juicy bits.
Mate, you're setting me up for failure by trying to pump up my tyres too much.
No, I'm just reading from the press release you sent out to me.
Oh, come on. Right, so if you are interested, you can head to commandthenarrative.com. All the stuff that I'm involved with goes up on that platform, whether it be Australians for Better Government or Let's Rethink Renewables. All the tours that we do, the articles I write, and the podcasts that I do are up on commandthenarrative.com. And very, very excited about what I'm about to launch next week with you, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity to host a show on your platform. It's going to be called The Stephen Tripp Show, believe it or not, and it's going to be on Tuesdays between 3 and 4. I haven't done anything like this before. I've been podcasting for 4 years, but to do a show like you do, Mike, is going to be an experience and a challenge, but I'm hopefully up to it, and hopefully it will be a good show, and I look forward to collaborating with you more and Jenny, and I'm excited about the path ahead, so we'll see what happens.
Yep, we'll just see what happens, and it's going to be Tripp in the Light, fantastic. Sorry, I was waiting to use that one. I thought, beauty, I can do it now. Have a great weekend. By the way, who do you follow in the football?
Which code are you
Well,
talking
there's
about?
only one code. The other has got big noses and ears and stuff. But the other one's just the AFL. It's the real football.
Yeah, mate, I'm a Sydney boy, so it's rugby league all the way. So I'm a West Tigers supporter, but I suppose if you are asking me about AFL, I did play AFL briefly when I was younger. So I would say probably the Swans, although they're not looking too flash at the moment.
No, they'll give you a call. They need some extra players at the moment. The only thing is you can't, or maybe you should have gone to a ladies' club. I'm not too sure about that one, but I think they're in a spot of bother. At the same time, Stephen, I think you'd have to agree, and I know you push for time, but you'd have to agree, these guys are playing football. They're footballers. They're not Einsteins or the Pope or what. What if it's the Pope? The Pope would be in there anyway. Oh, come and sit on my lap.
Well, I will say this quickly. Everywhere I look, whether it's ABC, News 24, no matter what platform, this is the headline story, right? And it's a story. I'm not trying to diminish what happened, but there's bigger issues that the Australian people are facing. And if you look on social media, the one thing that I'm seeing from everyday Australians and also real estate agents, property managers, and even business owners now, which is a big thing, I think, they're all speaking about the economy. That's the one big issue in my view. The one big news story is the state of the economy and the decline that we've seen over the last 20 years, and it's only speeding up now under Anthony Albanese. And to see small business owners that are usually focused on building their business and they don't try and get political, I'm seeing clips of them complaining about the tax system and the fact that they just can't get ahead in their business, just like everyone else here in the country. I think that's the big news story that we should be focusing on.
It is indeed, and I mean it's quite salacious too. What they do, they snorted cocaine. Apparently, this is according to reports. I think from the ABC, snorted cocaine off the breast and the buttocks of these women, and then apparently someone did something else. But what's worse than that? I mean, if you looking at doing something quite dastardly and not all that. That you wouldn't talk to your grandmother about, snorting cocaine off the breast or off the bottom of a woman is a fairly, it does show you that they have lost their way. And they're footballers too, but so they haven't understood that they've lost their way because they're not that intelligent. That would seem to be the case. So stupid boys. But, you know, as I said, you'll get a call from the club very shortly and you'll be playing in the centre. Once you realise where the centre is,
I'm 42. I'm on my way to 42, mate. I can't really run anymore, let alone play AFL.
Don't let your age stop you. Just do what I do. Denial. Stephen Tripp, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get to your other job. Thank you so much. This is the Country Telegraph.
Our mission at Pets of the Homeless is really simple, and that's to keep vulnerable people and their pets together when they're going through a tough time. Back in 2015, Pets of the Homeless started with a 20-kilo bag of dog food, made it into small packs, put it in a suitcase, and it was just me walking down the streets of Melbourne, one woman on a mission to make a difference. I would share the story on social media.
We've just hit 100,000 meals distributed today.
And the community really responded positively, and it just grew from there.
My name is Kent, and this is Hippo. She's everything to me. She's such a good girl. I got her at a time when I wasn't very stable. I'd come out of prison, I was homeless, but as soon as I got her, I just realised, oh my God, I can't let this dog go. And she's just my best friend. Hippo had a canine equivalent of an ACL injury. I knew there was something really desperately wrong. It was agonising seeing her suffering. My caseworker put me in touch with Pets of the Homeless, and Yvonne said that they could help, and I was just so overjoyed. I wouldn't have been able to get through that medical incident without their help. Like, it just would have been impossible.
That bond between us and our pet is very important, and when someone is going through a really tough time in their life, that bond becomes even more important, and that's what we're trying to protect at Pets of the Homeless.
Who's that?
My favourite quote is, "I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realised I was somebody." My intention wasn't to actually start a charity, it was to help. It was just putting one foot in front of another, and that's how we got to where we are today. We're now in a warehouse. We have about 150 volunteers. We provide on average about 60 to 70,000 meals every single month. We have a network of about 73 community partner organisations that we work with. We've also taken in hundreds of pets into our foster care program, and we've just reached 2.5 million meals distributed.
In the time that I've been volunteering with Pets of the Homeless, I've seen the community grow, numbers of volunteers, pet food packing, got a brand new van, and we can reach more community pantries and reach more people. The community, whether it's the volunteers who are packing the food, who are foster caring, they've got so much love to give.
I think Pets of the Homeless gives people hope. There can be a bit of judgment for people who are homeless and have a dog, but the reality is those dogs have got love and support, and it's so wonderful that Pets of the Homeless are able to help. It really makes a big difference in actual lives. It's really important work.
To the people who have supported Pets of the Homeless over the last 10 years, thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's so many kind people out there, and I'm just grateful for all of them. The work that we need to do is so huge and the need is growing, and we can't do it without the support of our community.
And welcome back to the Pulse. We formerly were the Country Telegraph. Still got most of the stuff. We are going to branch out, as you heard Stephen Tripp there. He has a new show starting next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And that'll be a very good show too. Also, we have a whole bunch of new shows starting at 7 o'clock too. And we'll talk to one of the hosts from one of those new shows in the next hour, which is just going to be fantastic. And we all agree, those who understand the importance, and we go on about, and people say, "Oh, on about those bloody horses again." I mean, and I used to watch Mr. Ed, yellow. But here's the thing, these horses, they represent, to me anyway, and many others, our past. And we should be reminded that, you know, even though they were magnificent animals, companions for those. So, for example, at Beersheba, which I'm going to play in a second, in the First World War, the light horsemen, after they did what they did, we shot them all. We grounded them up and machine gunned the whole lot, almost the whole lot, and killed them. And we haven't changed. We're now running around the paddocks in the national parks, and we're doing terrible things to the horses, which is just incredible, shooting them. And the numbers are distorted, the data is all wrong. Penny Sharp and the ISC, Andrew Cox's legacy, well, he's not legacy, he's still floating around doing other stuff. And then we have, you know, the Jack Off, and Richard Swain, and who else is there? All those all horrible creatures. And then the National Parks and Wildlife Service, they're just terrible too. They're doing all they can to discredit Australia, and they are. They're discrediting Australia. The world is now watching, and this is not how Australians should act. So I thought, being a Friday, I'll play this track. To me, this means a hell of a lot, and it took me a long time not to well up when I heard it, because I understand and I appreciate our history. And even though not perfect, obviously we haven't learnt from our mistakes. And the idea of calling the horse an invasive species after the Brumby, or the whaler had been there for 200 years. We put them there. They have had no fear of humans, and now we go and shoot them, whether it's from the helicopter or from just on foot. These men, these great big bullies, that's what they are. Doesn't make you a man if you can kill a helpless animal. Just makes you a mongrel or a bastard anyway. So I'm going to play this track, and then we'll come back and we'll do the weather, and we'll talk to one of our future hosts, and ever so kind to volunteer her time, because we are trying to put more back and give more value and make sure that we are a credible alternative to Sky News and Avi Yemeni and Carl, King Carl. Ooh. Did you see Carl yesterday walking across Sydney Harbour? Maybe not. Where were those sharks? Anyway, so this is a brilliant track, and it does show you that we should recognise our past a lot more than we are at the moment.
They carried stockmen. They carried soldiers. They carried legends from Beersheba to the mountains of the high country. The thunder herd still rides. Skies and snow gums bow in winter light. 1,000 shadows cross the dawn, their wild hearts burning through the night. Their blood remembers campfire smoke, long dusty trails and stockmen's hands. The freedom of a younger world still running through this ancient land. Listen. The mountains know their language. Listen. The valleys speak their names. They are the thunder rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them. No walls contain them. The spirit of the light horse rides. They are the thunder herd, and the mountains know their names. Across the burning Sinai sands, they carry fate in steady hands. Through dust and fire they thundered on toward Beersheba's fateful dawn. Horse and rider forged as one, a rolling wave against the guns. The desert shook beneath their stride as Australia rose in pride. They are the thunder herd, rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them, no walls contain them. The spirit of the light horse ride. They are the thunder herd, and the mountains know their name. And standing on the highest ridges, when the world below has gone to sleep, the ancient stallions face the darkness, guarding secrets they still keep. They remember every stockman, every drover, every mountain horseman, every charge, every rider who never came home, every horse who carried him there. Ride on. Ride on. Ride on. ever shaped the land. They are the thunder herd, and they still ride, and they still ride. From Beersheba to the high country, the thunder herd still rides.
And that is what we should be doing. To think we're not is deplorable. As a nation, we're failing miserably. And, it's so interesting. People still, there are many, great number of our population don't know about it. Legacy media is doing a magnificent job in stuffing it up. By the way, where are the politicians? Where's One Nation? We saw Angus make a slight foray, put his toe in the water, and then that was it. Where are they? Where's the politicians? Where's Kelly Sloan? Oh, Kelly is ABC. Kelly is very much like Labor. And she leads the LNP in New South Wales. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic, Kelly Sloan. We've invited you. Many people have asked you to do a little more than nothing, and you've done nothing. So well done, well done. And then we have, who else? King Carl, he hasn't done much. The independent media is not doing much. They're just ignoring it, and I think that's deplorable. Shows you their strength of character, doesn't it? Pathetic. Do more. You watch Carl put his toe in, and they will become, just, oh, Carl is there. We're going to run to King Carl. Oh, King Carl. Think what he was like 4 years ago. King Carl. Anyway, if you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with your frontline staff, and gather valuable data from your most important resource, your employees, then pop onto your computer or your phone, have a look at instantpolls.online to learn more. Now, this week's poll is your thoughts on One Nation as a leading Australian political party. If she was going to be a true representative of Australia, in my humble opinion, she would do more. Instead of this divisive, send them all home, get rid of them, we don't want those people in our country. It's a bit late, we invited them. You can't just send them home. The trouble we have in Melbourne and Sydney and the Gold Coast, it's the children of those terrible people. Anyway, so you can't do that. We do need to fix our national pride up, and that she's doing, I think, a pretty good job. But there are other things to dip her toes into. Anyway, that was just a sidebar, Your Honour. Just use the QR code on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA. Now, it's a short week. In fact, it's finished. Thank God it's Friday. And the result will be broadcast on the Pulse after 4 o'clock next Monday. The link, by the way, is on our Facebook page. And don't forget, share the link, share the love, ask your family and friends to participate, and make your opinion count.
Wet and stormy in the west and very windy for Tasmania tomorrow. Ilana here from the Bomb with your national weather forecast for this weekend, Saturday the 22nd and Sunday the 23rd of August. Now there's plenty to look at for Saturday's weather chart. Out west we can see a low pressure system and trough moving in, bringing plenty of shower and thunderstorm activity to Western Australia. We also have some lingering cloud and showers through Central Australia as well as through the east, though this is on an easing trend. And further south, we have a very strong cold front moving through Tasmania, bringing very windy conditions as well as some showers and cold air. So let's now take a look at each state, and we'll start in Queensland, where tomorrow morning we will see fog through inland parts of the east. Now we have this area here of lingering shower activity through the southern interior. However, this is on an easing trend throughout the day. We'll also see some isolated shower activity along parts of the coast tomorrow. Elsewhere though, it will be mostly dry. For Brisbane itself, it will be cloudy with a top of 23. For New South Wales, this lingering shower activity will continue in the northeast, with the possibility of some storms along the coast as well. It will be more settled inland with areas of fog and frost tomorrow morning and just the chance of some isolated shower activity in the far south. For Sydney tomorrow it will be sunny with a top of 23 degrees, and for Canberra we'll have a frosty start, then a sunny day with a top of 18. For Victoria tomorrow we'll see fog through northern parts tomorrow morning. Now we do have this cold front passing through to the south. That is going to bring an increase in cloud and shower activity to parts of the state, particularly about our southern exposed coasts, where it could also be a little bit windy. For Melbourne tomorrow we'll see 16 degrees, a partly cloudy day, and the possibility of a shower throughout the day. It is going to be a very windy start to the day for Tasmania, with a strong cold front passing through. Now we have issued a severe weather warning for damaging wind gusts starting in that overnight period. Now we could be looking at gusts up to 100 kilometres per hour for the west and northeast in that early morning period, and then extending to parts of the centre, including the Midlands and up towards the Western Tiers later in the morning period before easing later in the day. This system will also bring some shower activity, particularly in the west, a little bit lighter in the east, and with it some cool air as well, so we could be looking at some small hail in the south and some snow down to around 1100 metres. For Hobart tomorrow we'll see 12 degrees with some possible morning showers. For South Australia it is looking like a more settled day with this high pressure system, bringing some morning fog in the south. There are a couple of areas which could still see some showers though tomorrow, including in the far northwest as well as in the southeast. For Adelaide we could see a morning shower, then it will clear up with a top of 17 degrees. In Western Australia, we have this low pressure system and trough moving onshore. Now that is being assisted by a trough in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That means that we're really looking at an increase in cloud, shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow, impacting much of inland Western Australia, extending to parts of the west coast, as well as further east towards central Australia. Now later in the day, this rainfall activity will extend further south, impacting northern and eastern parts of the southwest land division. For Perth tomorrow it will be a dry start, we'll get to a top of 23 degrees, but there is the possibility of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. Looking at the Northern Territory now, in the south through central Australia we do have this area of lingering cloud and shower activity, bringing some cooler conditions. But up north, another typical dry season day, Darwin will see 33 degrees and sunshine. Let's now take a bit of a look into Sunday, where we're still continuing to watch this low pressure system and trough. That is going to continue to bring enhanced rainfall and thunderstorm activity to eastern parts of Western Australia, and then moving more so into the Northern Territory and South Australia. In the east, a high pressure system will bring settled conditions to many, with areas of morning fog and frost, but we are still looking at some coastal showers for parts of New South Wales and Queensland. Let's take a look across our capitals. For Brisbane and Sydney, we'll see mild days with the possibility of a shower or two. For Canberra, Hobart, Melbourne and Adelaide, we're looking at dry, partly cloudy conditions with temperatures in the mid to high teens. Out west, Perth will see a mostly fine day with a top of 20, and sunshine will continue up north, 33 degrees for Darwin. For Alice Springs, we will see those showers starting to move in, so it could be a bit of a wet day. We'll see 25 degrees. That's all for our national weather forecast. If you'd like some more information, please visit us at the Bureau's website, app or social media. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.
Management was deciding in the dark. We lacked a method to hear from people across the organisation. We started using instant polls under our brand. Their expert design templates made it effortless to ask the right questions of the people who matter most, our frontline teams. We've seen improved profits and happier staff, and we now make better company decisions thanks to instant polls. Join us. Try your first free poll at instantpolls.online.
You're with Mike Ryan on today's News Talk, The Pulse.
Don't you love that smiling face? Sorry, I shouldn't do that. I should be more respectful to me. Slap me down. Marilyn Nutsky is a principal lawyer and an animal rights lawyer. Marilyn has been involved in animal conservation work for 15 years. She's the founder of the Brumby Action Group, the real one, and involved in dingo conservation. Marilyn, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's just quickly, we need to clear up because people have been saying there are two Facebook pages. Tell us about the real one and the bad one. The real one and the one that's sort of imitating what you're doing.
Okay, well, the real one is a group called Brumby Action Group. It was incorporated, but I removed that not very long ago. And the purpose of the group is the preservation and conservation of Australian brumbies, wild-living brumbies, through legislation. Lo and behold, maybe 2 months ago, a page appeared. They'd basically taken a photocopy, they've taken a photograph of the banner, word for word. Well, they've used the banner, and it's basically a copy. They've started, it's a fake group, and they've set up an Instagram page, but they have a couple of hundred followers. I found out not very long ago, the person called Cynthia, who runs it, is a fake name, of course, and there is a man who runs it. So I'm not quite sure why he's doing it, other than to annoy me. I tend now just to annoy it. I wrote to him, asked him to take it down. I mean, really, is it worth? I don't even know why. They were fundraising, so I reported them to Crime Watch, of course, because I didn't want people to think that was our group, which has 35,000 followers, and I didn't want them to get sucked in. So that's what it is. It's a fake group, an imposter.
Yeah, it's terrible. Whenever I see a post come through, I say, this is a fake one. I mean, it's terrible. And I think Facebook should take it down too. They supposedly are looking after us, but Facebook go to protect us. And
well, they won't take it down. So many of our group have reported it, and they won't take it down. I don't know why, but anyway.
I'm just wondering whether there's other activities behind that, pushing it just to discredit the entire Brumby, save the Brumby collective of different.
Well, I was a little bit horrified to see that they ran an online chat with shooters, with a shooter who actually turned out to be one of the imposters, pretending that, well, talking about the fact that shooting wasn't that bad, and that really horrified me. So I don't know who it is and why it is. It could be one of our opponents, one of the pro getting rid of Brumby people. Who knows? So I can't really say that without evidence, but it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. It's a shocker, isn't it? Just tell me the state of the environment and the conservation debate in Australia at the moment.
What we're doing?
Yeah,
do you mean? What Brumby Action?
Yeah, not just the Brumby Action Group, but I mean the whole kit and caboodle. We have all these different groups, whether it's saving dingo, saving the Brumby, How is it making enough inroads into government, or those make the decisions, to stop a lot of these inaccuracies occurring?
I don't know. You see things happening like the finance committee. What is it called? The finance, whatever it is, committee. And there were some wonderful politicians speaking and asking sharp questions about, what do they call it? The finance, I don't know. That annually they have to give a report, and they spoke very forcefully. It was horrifying to actually hear Sharp say that Brumbies die within a matter of seconds. I mean, it's ludicrous. What came out, I think, was a lot of the nonsense that they are sprouting. How can you shoot in a matter of seconds 7 to 15 bullets and expect a Brumby to die? I mean, they don't. We all know they don't. They linger. And they even spoke about helicopters hovering and shooting. Well, Brumbies don't stand still while a helicopter is hovering. Brumbies run to get away. So it was absolute nonsense that they were talking about. And I did think that Minister Sharp did look a little disturbed about the whole questioning that went on. So that was sort of thing. There's also a lot of rallying and protesting going on at the moment because there's some more shooting taking place soon up around, I think you're going there, so you have to remind me, it's north, and that's another set of protests. In fact, I think there's a protest today at Maruya because Minister Sharp is talking once again on financial matters. So I think there'll be some, maybe some posts about that.
It's incredible. But and I'm often critical of the Australian public because they don't do enough. But in all fairness, also the media, whether it's legacy media or whether it's even a lot of independent media, there's not a whole lot of reporting on and the misconceptions of what these animals, for example, look at the horse. Oh, it's killing the environment. It's doing nothing of the sort.
No.
Yet, and they present the figures that they present. And I know that you can manipulate things, and they're dated, and they don't really, they're not evidence. They're just a collective of garble that they put out as facts. And most people, they still trust government. Don't know why they would do that, but they trust government. And they believe, they must be doing the right thing. Must be 432 million horses running around, which also which we should point out. If there are 425 million horses running around, it doesn't excuse killing the horse. There are other things we can do these days. And with animals such as, we talk about, the dingo ran off with Azaria Chamberlain's, I think it was her daughter, took it off Uluru, last seen heading towards Indonesia. So the misconceptions about dingoes and other animals, tell us, that must, because you are very much into looking after these much maligned animals, the information we get about the horse destroying the environment or the dingo running off with your next door neighbour's kid or whatever, these are much maligned species, the horse and the dingo.
Well, it's true because basically the media are getting very biased information passed over to them, pardon me, and I think for the horse, we know where that information is coming from, pardon me, coming from Jack, and of course they have a mission that they want to do certain thing, so it's always the same rhetoric that's handed out to the media, and unfortunately Brumby advocates very rarely get a chance to speak. And I think the same thing with dingoes. Dingoes are in fact a very shy species. So, I was legal advisor to Save Fraser Island Dingoes for 10 years, which is a group run out of Harvey Bay. And their role was to try and protect dingoes on Fraser Island. And when you hear a lot of the stories about tourists jogging along the beach and getting bitten on the bum and all sorts of things, there's so many other stories to that. For a start, it's the worst thing that you can do around a dingo. It's very provocative to run down the beach, and the tourists are actually told, don't do that. So it's always the information that is actually handed out, and it very often places dingoes on that occasion in very perilous situations, because at that time, going back, say about 2009, 2010, the outcome for dingoes was that they would be shot.
Which is incredible, as you don't die on us. Go next week.
At that time, that was how it was handled. A ranger would just take the dingo away and shoot it in the head. There was a lot of protest about that. Dingoes were supposedly starving. I had a client, Jennifer Parkhurst. She is a photographer, and she was going onto the island very often, taking coconuts over to the island to feed the dingoes and filming herself feeding the dingoes, even with roast chickens. She, unfortunately, her computer was seized and she was prosecuted. So I represented her in court in Maryborough, And because of the number of photographs or films, videos taken of herself, there was so much evidence, so many charges. She was fined some phenomenal sum of over $1 million. I mean, it just seems ludicrous, feeding poor dingoes that they aren't starving, by the way, but she would interact with them. And in that way, she was able to take these beautiful photos of them. But what we did on that, at the when that happened, was we had the penalty reduced on submissions back to 42,000 with a community order. So that was a big thing to have actually been involved in, and I stayed on working with dingoes after that time.
Yeah, incredible. We've had a guest on also talking about dingoes and said people think they're dogs. They're not dogs at all.
No.
How do we get across to government and the public that we can live in harmony with all sorts of things, including the dingo? Because at the moment, truly, I mean, the image that I had for many years was that a dingo popped into the tent and, as I said, took away one of the Chamberlain's children, and that, and she was let off. Now, whether that was true or not, I don't know. You have to believe the court, I suppose, in some way. Having said that, you should never believe anything government's got their fingers in the pie of. But how do we live with the dingoes? How do we live with the, and the dingo's been here for 5,000 years.
Some people...
we call them dogs, and they're not a dog at all.
Well, that comes from, well, when Australia was colonised, I guess they didn't know what they were. They didn't know then it was a dingo. Nobody told them it was a dingo, but they of course called them dogs. And it might have been at that time that the dingoes were pinching a sheep here or there, and over time that title stuck. But also over a very long time, they were poisoning them with strychnine to get rid of them. And then along came 1080 in the 1950s, and that label continued and still continues today. And I believe it's really promoted by the Agricultural Department. You've got the Wild Dog Strategy Plan was actually penned by the Centre for Invasive Species Solutions, who are very involved in the manufacture of poison baits. So there's a lot of vested interest. It's another multi-million dollar business in Australia, the use of 1080 poison, unfortunately.
Yeah, 1080 is just a disgraceful poison. It's just like paraquat and glyphosate in Roundup. Most countries in the world have banned it.
Yeah.
We don't do that, and then we drop the 1080, and the horse is not going to eat that, but other animals will. And then then they'll die, and then the hawk or the eagle will fly down and eat that bird, and they'll die or be very sick and so forth. And then they die in the waterways, and if they die in the waterways themselves are then polluted, and goes on and on. But we still do it. We have this propensity that we have to kill, and kill. You've got a new show kicking off. Tell us about the show and what we can expect.
Okay, well, it's about Australian wildlife and protection, and I include brumbies in that. I've been working with a lot of wildlife groups over time, one being the dingoes, but I've also have a Facebook group called Coalition for Australian Wildlife, and so there are a whole lot of other species groups that belong to that, and which includes kangaroos and ducks. People, well, the ducks and the kangaroos don't, but there's lots of groups who participate in that for the benefit of the species that they represent. So it's amazing because there are actually many of these groups, and I feel that platform such as that is going to be really exciting. My first guest will be Ernest Healy, who actually authored the submission to have Victorian dingoes listed as a threatened species under the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act. So that's very interesting. He's got 2 dingoes, Kiri and Sienna, and I think it'll be a very exciting show. We're also meeting up with George Pujol, who is an internationally acclaimed candle artist, a great humanitarian, who creates these wonderful candle projects using thousands and thousands of candles, and it's generally protests or when of animals. In fact, we ran a protest in Melbourne where he made this gigantic dingo on the lawns of Treasury Gardens. It was just incredible. It was incredibly exciting because it was really constructive, people coming together to listen to people like Evan Quartermain and, anti-1080 poison. And then people gathered with their children, laid out the candles with George, and then later it was lit. It was just a really lovely thing to do. So they're my 2 guests, and I hope that George and Ernest will share. Ernest will talk about the listing and how he achieved it and his position on where dingoes are at nowadays. And I have no doubt that he will talk about the fact that dingoes are persecuted, that they cop a lot of for actually eating sheep than they really do, according to data that's released from the government. In fact, it's not quite true. Another species that are vilified, in fact.
Yeah, I saw a dingo the other day, and I'm being very truthful. It had 17 people in its mouth, and it was walking in the background behind us, Coolangatta. They're just terrifying creatures, and I'm just being stupid. Just tell me, wildlife volunteers, they are such an important part of the whole process. But it's not it can be quite unrewarding if you're looking for government appreciation. Having said that, what they are doing, like those looking after, trying to protect the brumbies, those protecting the dingoes and other animals throughout Australia, they're doing a magnificent job, and they will go to heaven. Tell us about them.
I think they will. Really, I can't speak much. There are a lot of lovely dingo sanctuaries around, and they rely on fundraisers, and they don't get money. So they do sell some, but selling dingoes is very difficult, or passing dingoes over to the public, because they're not really an easy animal to adopt. It takes a certain kind of person to understand a dingo. And I think also that Brumby sanctuaries are incredible, the work they do, and they work really literally around the clock, rescuing the Brumbies and fundraising, and it's amazing. And I think that's how Brumby Action Group, it's a bit of a transition, I think. When I first started Brumby Action Group, it's about the preservation and conservation of Australian wild-living Brumbies. And in Victoria, I authored legislation, which I unfortunately wasn't able to get. I tried to save Brumbies in Singleton. There was a cull of Brumbies that were had connection to a bloodline called Suffolk Punch. They all went. It was Commonwealth land, army base, so very, very difficult. So, and then I was involved in the Barmer Brumbies. I've spent years, but I think what I have come to realise now with the Brumbies that we're trying to save in KNP is how difficult it is. Minister Sharp was asked, will she continue to aerial shoot? And she just said, yes. Now, I know that must have something to do with the strategy offsets that are tied in with the projects in KNP. It's all to do with hydro too. And that's when I started to think, well, how are we going to deal with this? And that's when I set up a wonderful webinar with an ecologist from Nevada, Craig Downer. And it was really a very relaxing way to run a webinar. We workshopped it, and what are we going to do? And we resolved that what we would really like to do, really, and I know others have thought about this, is to have a Bromby Wildlife Reserve, a conservation area in Kosciuszko National Park. I mean, Kosciuszko National Park is 1,700,000 acres. You would think that within that area there could be set aside 10, 20,000 acres. I think it's about removing the Brombies away from Hydro 2, away from the snowfields somehow, and establishing an area where they'll actually be protected only by the fact that humans won't be able to go there. Craig encourages use of what he calls a reserve design, which is using local eucalypts or whatever, blocking certain areas with constructions to stop Brombies going into any fragile areas that they might otherwise go into. It's possible. It's used elsewhere, and there's no reason, I think, that that shouldn't be happening in KMP. So what we're doing at the moment is we're authoring a letter which we're going to have signed by a number of ecologists, and we are then going to approach the New South Wales government to see if we can't negotiate something, because otherwise I have serious concerns because of Hydro 2, because of the offset strategies, because of the 90 to 100 million that's already sitting in an account with National Parks and Wildlife Services. How you shake that, I really don't know. Maybe this is a way, either that or maybe it'll be the report I'm putting into ICAC. Who knows? But something's got to give, and I think that's me doing something in middle of the road. It's neither rehoming. I think rehomers are wonderful, and they rehome Brombies that are trapped. So they're doing a beautiful job. But nor can I come at Bromby shooting. It's just abhorrent. So somewhere in between for both Craig and I is this idea, and we're really hoping. He's wonderful. So we're in constant contact, working out how we're authoring the letter at the moment between us, and let's just hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed, because I really don't know.
I don't agree. And you'll go to heaven too, Marilyn. I don't think anyone said that to you before, but you will.
That's not what they all say about me.
No, I don't know. Well, the gossiping, the OK Corral. But we'll leave that one alone. Your show next week is Australian Wildlife Protection. If somebody wants to get hold of you, for nice things, of course, glass of wine, dinner. No, but just get hold.
I'm open to offers, all right? But no, I'm only joking. I think at this point in time would probably be to contact me via Bromby Action Group, brombyactiongroup@gmail.com is probably the best way. But later, I actually think we do have an Australian Wildlife Protection email address, but I've got to make sure.
Good on you. You're a lawyer. With you.
Sometimes I wish I wasn't a lawyer.
No, you're I said you go to heaven. Just don't forget to wave to me as you pass. Marilyn, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. We're very grateful to the Pulse for allowing us to have this show.
It's what we have to do. As simple as that. And
I agree.
And keep all the politics aside.
Well, you'll go to heaven too.
No, I won't. No, I've got a rock. It's already got my name on it. Let me tell you. There is a glass of scotch next to it, though. It's a cheap one. Marilyn, thank you so much. This is The Pulse.
How should we meet the challenge of managing wild horse populations? Hello, I'm Wayne Linklater, and Professor of Environmental Studies and author of the new book, Wild Horses of the Last Land. Learning about ourselves and nature from the Kaimanawa wild horses. Frankly, how we currently manage populations of wild horses is counterproductive. But it doesn't have to be that way. If we would lean more heavily, more fully into what we know about the ecology and behaviour of wild horses, we could design a scheme for managing their populations that is more effective, efficient, and yes, humane. I would argue more ethical. If you want to know more, see the last section of my new book titled Conservation. I'll see you on the other side.
Want to be part of the conversation? Then let us know on the Pulse Interactive Live Chat Room at thepulse.today. We tell it as it is. Today's news talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back. It's a Friday. Now, don't you love Fridays? Only our second day this week because of our delays with the who were receiving lovely comments from other users of this particular platform. But I won't go into that, otherwise I'll get taken off the air. But anyway, we're on air, second day. But it feels like I've been working 432 years, probably my age. Anyway, Zoe Hilton is the spokesperson for Affordable Energy Australia. She is a policy analyst and media commentator with a background in energy policy, government and environmental research. First of all, got a welcome to our, I suppose, microphone or cameras, her camera on a laptop. Zoe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Tell me about the Coalition for Conservation.
Yeah, so we're a group that is running the Affordable Energy Australia campaign. That is our main campaign right now. And because what we've realised is that for too long, Australians have been dealing with unaffordable energy, and that is not being understood by Australia's leaders. And until we fix that problem, we're not actually going to be able to have environmental concerns dealt with, because at the moment cost of living is the #1 concern for most people, and so an environment is way down the list. And so I just think until we fix that problem in our energy system, then we're not going to be able to do anything useful. So that is why I've launched Affordable Energy Australia. I'll show you the QR code that we have for our petition. So we've launched this petition. We have 13,000 signatures. We are calling for Australia's leaders to prioritise affordable and reliable energy. So please, if you want to see your bills go down, because we've had a 220% increase in the last since 2004, which is, I just think, unacceptable. If you want to see that end and actually have your bills go down, then scan this QR code, go sign the petition. We'd love your support. It is a fight that we must win if anyone's going to be able to afford to live in Australia anymore, honestly.
The net zero policies are not delivering affordable energy, and anybody who thought they were has been drinking the same Kool-Aid that Chris Bowen, Albanese and all the other bullfeds have been drinking. Why aren't governments taking notice of their own data? Because the data does show that renewables, as Malcolm Roberts would say, are the unreliables.
Exactly, yeah. So the problem with the current plan is that we're trying to put in more and more intermittent sources of energy into the system. And what happens when you do that is that you have to put in all of this added infrastructure to support them, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And so that means you need more storage, you need more transmission, and that is going to increase system costs, which then increases bills. And so what we really need is we need to have more reliable 24/7 baseload in the system. Ultimately, that is what will lead to prices lowering over time and bills being able to lower over time. That is what we see when we look overseas. We see that there are no high wind and solar low-cost countries. They don't exist. And so I think we need to take that evidence on board. And we're seeing in Germany, for example, I just went to Germany, and they're seriously rethinking their energy transition. So their energy minister, Katharina Reicher, she actually has come out and said an energy transition that ignores system costs will ruin the country it claims to save. And so I think we really need to heed her words, and we need to make sure that affordability is number one and we have reliable baseload power coming into the system.
Can you tell me about the Gippsland poll, please?
Yeah, so what we found is we did a poll of Gippsland and the surrounding districts. This is a community that is really bearing the brunt of the energy transition. What we've seen is, there's this whole plan to shift away from coal power and to build offshore wind, and so in Gippsland they're facing the closure of Yallourn and Loy Yang A in the next several years. And the Victorian government's idea was to replace this with offshore wind, and they have all these targets in place. But now we're seeing the Victorian Auditor General say that the Victorian government will not meet its upcoming offshore wind target. We're seeing Star of the South, which is the offshore wind project that is most advanced in Australia. It has had its completion date pushed back, so it's not going to be finished in time to, supposedly replace these coal plants that are closing. And so the problem we're seeing is there was this idea that, we can do this transition really quickly and we can just build all this offshore wind and it'll replace coal and it'll all be fine. But the reality is that these communities are looking at losing hundreds of jobs, and it's not clear that these projects are actually going ahead. A lot of offshore wind projects are being cancelled or delayed. And so what are they going to do? What's going to happen to their economy? And what's going to happen to the rest of Victoria and Victorians' energy prices? And so what we saw in the polling, we asked people, how much are you willing to pay to accelerate the energy transition? And about 2/3 said that they don't want to pay a single cent to accelerate the transition. And then a similar amount, they want affordability to be number one. And you can see that very clearly in the ranking of priorities, that most people put affordability number one, reliability second, and then emissions reduction was third. And so we can see that people are not happy to pay for an energy transition at any cost. That's not a cost they're willing to bear, of just writing a blank check to renewables developers, essentially. They only support renewables insofar as they believe that it will lower their bills, but that is not what we're seeing. And so once people understand that actually this plan is not lowering bills, it is making their bills go up, and it will keep making them go up, that is when support for the current plan for the energy transition falls away. And I think that people really need to understand that so that we can make sure that we don't continue down this path that is destroying our energy system and making our bills keep going up.
Yep. I saw a video today, and I went looking for it again. Of course, it disappeared on me. But the video was, it was one of the renewable companies that was setting up a camp to be their centre point for putting up the transmission lines and turbines and all that sort of stuff. And it was right next door to this couple. And this couple had put all the money, everything into their forever home, out of the bush, quiet, and right on the fence they're putting this this camp that will have 24-hour activity, big trucks going to widen the road, the whole lot. So all of a sudden they're living in an industrial area, and they hadn't organised that, hadn't wanted that in the first place. And it would seem, as with other communities throughout Australia, that the renewable push has just been bulldozing communities. except for petitions and pushing your government to, or ministers or reps to do something, what else can they do?
So I have been out visiting many of these regional communities that are being impacted by these projects. And yeah, it's very true. I think that the regions are being forced to host projects that often communities have extreme opposition against, because when you think about what a wind farm or a transmission line does to a community that is not used to hosting energy infrastructure, it massively changes their way of life. These are often people who have moved to these areas because they want to be surrounded by nature, they don't want to be surrounded by industry, and that is being disrupted. And I've seen, even with farming especially, I've talked to farmers where they have a transmission line going through their property, there's an easement there, and so the transmission company will send people to conduct maintenance, but that's not always done at times that suits the farmers. And so they'll be in the middle of lambing and they will lose lambs because they're disrupted by the workers who are going to work on the transmission line. And so yes, like, we do need transmission lines for our energy system, but the more dispersed and intermittent energy sources you have, the more transmission you need, and the more impacts, the more farmers will be impacted. And I just think we should not be putting in energy sources in locations, particularly in Oberon, for example, which I visited recently. That is somewhere that has prime agricultural land. It's right next to the Blue Mountains National Park, and they're planning to build a wind farm there, and that will involve putting in transmission, all of that. So I don't think it makes sense to do that when we want to be farming on our prime agricultural land. We don't want to be putting in energy infrastructure. It's much better to use already degraded land to do that. And often what they say is, oh, well, you know, this wind farm is going into state forests, and isn't that already degraded land anyway? But you can't say that building a wind farm like 50 meters from the Blue Mountains World Heritage listed National Park is not going to disrupt wildlife or anything. Like, it's ridiculous. And so these are serious trade-offs that are being made, and I think a lot of the time these communities are being steamrolled. And so something that I'm really trying to do in my work is to film interviews with these communities, go out there, visit them, go into their properties, and they tell me what's really going on and what they're concerned about, and just raising awareness that way. So yeah, I really encourage everyone to follow the Coalition for Conservation social media channels if you want to see more of that content, and also Affordable Energy Australia channels. That's where we focus on the affordability aspect. And please, yeah, if anyone has stories, if you're facing this in your area, please reach out and let me know. Because yeah, honestly, I think we have to make sure that these communities can really band together and feel like they're not alone, because yeah, everyone facing this, they're not alone. There are many others facing this. And I think that's really important. And
you mentioned the turbines and the wildlife. I think it's 400 metres either side of the turbine that wildlife can't live because of the noise factor. Then you've got the birds that are flying into the turbines, and there's beautiful pristine parts of Australia, and say the Great Dividing Range, for example, up in Queensland, that is bulldozing basically the top off and putting in these turbines, which means then that if there is a fire, and there will be a fire, it happens all the time, so the fire will happen, and you can't get in air support because of the height of the turbines. You can't get into where the fire is because there are no tracks. They've shot all the horses anyway, so you can't get into hard to get to places. The only thing that will happen is that it will burn to the ground, and thousands upon thousands of animals will die along with humans. So the renewables, the unreliables, are also the destructibles. And I think anything we can do to slap the face of these politicians and say, wake up, the bad dream is finished. Stop taking magic mushrooms or drinking something, and realise the impact you are having on this country. And once you've destroyed it, it's very hard to come back. Zoe, if somebody wants to find out more about Affordable Energy Australia or contact you or someone, how do they do that?
You can go to affordableenergy.org.au. That's affordableenergy.org.au, and I'll hold this up one last time in case anyone would like to scan that. That'll be the easiest way to get to our site, and you can sign our petition there, and you can also donate if you'd like to support our work.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of our second broadcast. And so far, no glitches, although there's still some time to go. Zoe Hilton, thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend. May your football side win. I think I can tell a touch of American there. So perhaps the Dallas Cowboys and not the Sydney Swans. Thank you so much for your time. This is The Pulse.
So many places where they're using 1080 poison baits.
Yeah, it's an absolute travesty, mate.
It really is.
1080 baits, if you've seen what a 1080 bait does to a dog, it's one of the most horrific things you'll ever witness. And the second you see something like that, you'll be a big advocate for getting rid of 1080 baits. It's not the way to solve the problem with wild dogs and foxes and things like that.
On Sunday, August the 30th, I got a phone call from my husband. I wasn't here, I was out in Aramac staying with family. And he rang me very distressed and crying on the phone and told me that Tippy was dead. And he then described to me how that happened. He said he was inside, heard Tippy outside yelping, which progressively rapidly went to screaming, and he was thrashing him, throwing himself around. He went under my car, which is parked on the veranda in a carport, threw himself under the car and up under the wheel arch, obviously looking for sanctuary. Greg tried to grab him and got hold of his leg, and as he did that he just dropped dead. So he rang me and told me about this, so I was obviously quite distraught as well. And then he had to go into town, into Bundaberg, to pick up for a pre-arranged appointment. And when he came home a couple of hours later, Faye, our Maremma dog, was also dead. So within a couple of hours, we're not sure, any time between 9:30 and midday is when she died on that morning. So yeah, Greg took them to bury them, and he took Ted with him when he buried these two dogs, and Ted was there with him. And after Greg finished burying them, he wouldn't leave. He just laid, he sat, moved around. He wouldn't leave the gravesite. So Greg had to literally pick him up and take him away. So he knew his mates were in there. So, yeah, sorry.
1080 is not a humane poison, and despite people's claims that it is humane, we now recognise that that's not the case. It's not good enough to pretend to ourselves that it's humane and keep on doing the same old thing that we've been doing for years. There's no excuse to keep on using a poison that is not humane and that we know is not humane.
The king may rule over land and sea. The lord may live right royally. The soldier ride in pomp and pride. The sailor roam over ocean wide. But this or that, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The writer thinks, the poet sings, the craftsman fashion wondrous things. The doctor heals, the lawyer pleads, the miner follows, the precious leads. But this or that, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The merchant, he may buy and sell, the teacher do his duty well. But men may toil through busy days, or men may stroll through pleasant ways. From king to beggar, whatever befall, the farmer, he must feed them all. The farmer's trade is one of worth. He's partner with the sky and earth. He's partner with the sun and rain, and no man loses for his gain. And men may rise, or men may fall, But the farmer, he must feed them all. God bless the man who sows the wheat, who finds us milk and fruit and meat. May his purse be heavy, his heart be light, his cattle and corn and all go right. God bless the seeds his hands let fall. For the farmer, he must feed us all.
And welcome back to the Pulse. Coming up next, we'll have the protagonists, a slightly smaller panel today, but talking about deja vu, a bit like the Twilight Zone. Welcome to mRNA. Sudden and unexpected, something like that. Isn't it just dreadful? I cannot believe it. They're up next here on the Pulse.
Wet and stormy in the west and very windy for Tasmania tomorrow. Ilana here from the BOM with your national weather forecast for this weekend, Saturday the 22nd and Sunday the 23rd of August. Now there's plenty to look at for Saturday's weather chart. Out west we can see a low pressure system and trough moving in, bringing plenty of shower and thunderstorm activity to Western Australia. We also have some lingering cloud and showers through Central Australia as well as through the east, though this is on an easing trend. And further south, we have a very strong cold front moving through Tasmania, bringing very windy conditions as well as some showers and cold air. So let's now take a look at each state, and we'll start in Queensland, where tomorrow morning we will see fog through inland parts of the east. Now we have this area here of lingering shower activity through the southern interior. However, this is on an easing trend throughout the day. We'll also see some isolated shower activity along parts of the coast tomorrow. Elsewhere though, it will be mostly dry. For Brisbane itself, it will be cloudy with a top of 23. For New South Wales, this lingering shower activity will continue in the northeast, with the possibility of some storms along the coast as well. It will be more settled inland with areas of fog and frost tomorrow morning, and just the chance of some isolated shower activity in the far south. For Sydney tomorrow, it will be sunny with a top of 23 degrees, and for Canberra, we'll have a frosty start, then a sunny day with a top of 18. For Victoria tomorrow, we'll see fog through northern parts tomorrow morning. Now we do have this cold front passing through to the south. That is going to bring an increase in cloud and shower activity to parts of the state, particularly about our southern exposed coasts, where it could also be a little bit windy. For Melbourne tomorrow, we'll see 16 degrees, a partly cloudy day, and the possibility of a shower throughout the day. It is going to be a very windy start to the day for Tasmania, with a strong cold front passing through. Now we have issued a severe weather warning for damaging wind gusts starting in that overnight period. Now we could be looking at gusts up to 100 kilometres per hour for the west and northeast in that early morning period, and then extending to parts of the centre, including the Midlands and up towards the Western Tiers later in the morning period before easing later in the day. This system will also bring some shower activity, particularly in the west, a little bit lighter in the east, and with it some cool air as well, so we could be looking at some small hail in the south and some snow down to around 1100 metres. For Hobart tomorrow, we'll see 12 degrees with some possible morning showers. For South Australia, it is looking like a more settled day with this high pressure system, bringing some morning fog in the south. There are a couple of areas which could still see some showers though tomorrow, including in the far northwest as well as in the southeast. For Adelaide, we could see a morning shower, then it will clear up with a top of 17 degrees. In Western Australia, we have this low pressure system and trough moving onshore. Now that is being assisted by a trough in the upper levels of the atmosphere. That means that we're really looking at an increase in cloud, shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow, impacting much of inland Western Australia, extending to parts of the west coast, as well as further east towards Central Australia. Now later in the day, this rainfall activity will extend further south, impacting northern and eastern parts of the southwest land division. For Perth tomorrow, it will be a dry start. We'll get to a top of 23 degrees, but there is the possibility of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. Looking at the Northern Territory now, in the south through Central Australia, we do have this area of lingering cloud and shower activity, bringing some cooler conditions. But up north, another typical dry season day. Darwin will see 33 degrees and sunshine. Let's now take a bit of a look into Sunday, where we're still continuing to watch this low pressure system and trough that is going to continue to bring enhanced rainfall and thunderstorm activity to eastern parts of Western Australia, and then moving more so into the Northern Territory and South Australia. In the east, a high pressure system will bring settled conditions to many, with areas of morning fog and frost, but we are still looking at some coastal showers for parts of New South Wales and Queensland. Let's take a look across our capitals. For Brisbane and Sydney, we'll see mild days with the possibility of a shower or two. For Canberra, Hobart, Melbourne and Adelaide, we're looking at dry, partly cloudy conditions with temperatures in the mid to high teens. Out west, Perth will see a mostly fine day with a top of 20, and sunshine will continue up north, 33 degrees for Darwin. For Alice Springs, we will see those showers starting to move in, so it could be a bit of a wet day. We'll see 25 degrees. That's all for our national weather forecast. If you'd like some more information, please visit us at the Bureau's website, app or social media. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.
Management was deciding in the dark. We lacked a method to hear from people across the organisation. We started using instant polls under our brand. Their expert design templates made it effortless to ask the right questions of the people who matter most, our frontline teams. We've seen improved profits and happier staff, and we now make better company decisions thanks to instant polls. Join us. Try your first free poll at instantpolls.online.
Want to be part of the conversation? Then let us know on the Pulse Interactive Live Chat Room at thepulse.today. We tell it as it is. Today's news talk, The Pulse.
And welcome back to The Pulse, the protagonist, a star-studded lineup from one from Ireland, the other from Australia in Sydney town. Isn't it funny? Deja vu. Deja vu. Do you get the feeling that we've all been here before? mRNA vaccines. Now one for the flu has been approved by the FDA and mandated for US Navy personnel. Get the jab. Public health bureaucrats avoiding scrutiny, and government regulators such as the TGA refusing to produce documentation on their testing protocols. Other crazy vaccines are being used to experiment on our precious fairy penguins, and supercharged fear-mongering from NGOs and other agencies with H5N1 bird flu. Let's get to the bottom of this with our guest today, who all remember what we went through 5 years ago. Has anything really changed? When do we expect government and mainstream media censorship to kick in? Our first guest is Dr. Jerry, who was he was suspended. He was suspended, so as I bring him in at the moment, he was suspended by the for refusing to administer COVID-19 vaccines. He remains suspended and is in a long-running legal dispute with the council for a return of his licence. He is still suspended because the Irish Medical Council have to take him to the High Court to return his licence, although telling him in March they were withdrawing the charges. And that's Dr. Gerard Waters. Our next one is it needs no introduction. Tony Nikolic, one of the world's great lawyers. As he's looking in the background, maybe he could represent the Sydney Swans, who knows? But Tony Nikolic is general manager at the AFL Solicitors. He's an experienced lawyer and criminologist committed to social justice. He offers pro bono legal work and champions civil and human rights. Tony has expertise in whistleblower protections. First of all, gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And is it your pleasure, Tony?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. Lovely to see you all again.
We actually have some echo coming through Sam at the moment with Dr. Jerry. His laugh just kept going and going. It's like a Stephen King novel. If you wouldn't mind fixing that part up for us, because otherwise we're going to have some mind games between my ears. I've got to ask you first, Jared or Dr. Jerry, whatever they want to call you. Are you surprised with the progress of bringing back mRNA? And I think our last conversation, which was 232 years ago, seems like that you were scathing, I think, at that stage on mRNA. Has anything changed?
Well, nothing has changed. And I'm not surprised. No, of course not. They brought this technology, which was originally invented as a cancer treatment, and that's why I refer to it as a gene therapy. Now, people all jump down my neck and try to tell me, oh, it's not a therapy, but its official name, according to the drugs companies and the CDC in America, and that refer to it as a gene therapy. I'm not surprised that they're trying to bring it back. It's very hard to know what the purpose of it is. Is it to actually act as a vaccine and prevent illness, or is it a way of wiping out its subjects? Because I can honestly see no logical medical way that it is necessary or required or ethical to use it as a vaccine. It's just not a vaccine. It's a biological weapon, and people keep saying that, and it almost becomes mundane to use the term biological weapon. But it is. What's its purpose? I just don't know.
Tony, what do you think?
Well, the aspect about the mRNA, as everyone knows here in Australia, anyway, I challenged it. I was the first lawyer in Australia. I could see straight off the bat that there was a problem, and I recall that some of the evidence that I led in the Kassam Hazar case, yes, it was dismissed by the court, but a lot of what you're seeing Dr. Fauci come up with now, we're talking that case was filed and ran in August of 2021, so we jumped out of the blocks very quick in that, and I appreciate what Dr. Waters was saying there a moment ago. We had Dr. Michael Palmer, who put on evidence that the fact that no one understands the level of genotoxicity that's in this, but that was also supported in freedom of information requests that we did with the Therapeutic Goods Administration here in Australia, where they said 3 key topics. We asked them what are the risks, and they said they hadn't done genotoxicity tests, they hadn't done carcinogenicity tests, and they hadn't done fertility tests. This is precisely a lot of the side effects. Now, notwithstanding the myocarditis and the pericarditis that we know has been infiltrated into so many of people's lives, not from want, but by I still say it was coercion. And we have young males and young people who are now experiencing myocarditis. I have a coronial report that I submitted in that case of a 52-year-old gentleman who suffered a cardiac arrest as a result of granulomatous myocarditis, and a 16-year-old son had to do CPR while he watched his father's life expire in front of his eyes in the kitchen while his mother called the police. These are coronial reports. These aren't Facebook posts. They're not, social media posts. It's not conjecture. This is a forensic pathologist, okay, operating under the Uniform Civil Procedure rules. So it's not conjecture, and I certainly support what Dr. Waters is saying there, is that we were involved in what Greg Hunt, as you may recall, Mike, where he came out in, I think it was February of 2021, and said, we're involved in the world's largest clinical trial. And that's what it was.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Jerry, you were just in the US, I think fairly recently.
Yeah.
Tell me the state of play in regards to mRNA and your thoughts.
Well, first of all, as for being in the USA, I went across to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sturgis. It's a massive, massive motorcycle rally. It's all big motorcycles, as one would expect. It's big Harley Davidsons and massive men on these massive motorcycles. And I went across for two reasons. I went across fundamentally because I was a biker. I'd ridden Harley Davidsons here in Ireland, and I'd ridden lots of bikes. But I also went across to celebrate the Sturgis and South Dakota, who in 2020 defied federal regulations and mandates not to lock down. Kirsty Noem, you're familiar with Kirsty Noem, had decided for some reason or other, as the mayor of Sturgis said in an interview with me, said she got this idea, I don't know where, or she got this information, I don't know where she got the information, but she was fairly certain that the virus had very little pathogenicity, and she ran with it, and she stuck with it. And as it transpires, South Dakota didn't lock down. They had their rally in 2020, massively successful. And since then, all the figures that have come back, all the statistics came back saying that Sturgis, with 500,000 people in close proximity, and these bikers are, hell bent on enjoying themselves. It was not a super spreading event. So it was brilliant. So that's South Dakota. What's the state of play? I met up with a Marine over there. He was my Uber driver, came to the airport, met up with him, showed him my card, had a chat, and he became my best friend. And as we went around the sites of South Dakota, fabulous landmarks, and the Crazy Horse monuments and Custer Park and that, we were meeting Marines. And these guys on the bikes have a patch, a Marine patch. And my Marine colleague or driver start chatting to them. They're absolutely, totally. I didn't meet one person that was happy they had a vaccine. In fact, I only met two people who'd had vaccines, admitted to being coerced into taking the vaccine. Well, I hate using the word vaccine, the gene therapy. It wasn't a vaccine. But everybody is thrilled that they didn't lock down. They are thrilled. They're very, very proud of the fact they didn't lock down. They're very proud of the fact that North Dakota, which is their neighbour state, did lock down hard. And overall, there were no statistical difference between the deaths and illnesses. So I've been saying all along this was in fact a psychological operation, and it was a psych op. And but that's the little bit of America I saw, and even on the plane coming back, I got chatting to a guy, and a woman in front had a particularly acute hearing, and she turned around and started chatting to us. Everybody is on board. Literally on that plane they were on board, but they were very on board the idea that COVID was a pathogenic hoax, and the vaccination was a bad idea. Sorry for going on, Mike. You know I'll take over if I get half an opportunity.
I had noticed. Joanne Noble joined us too, author and blogger and speaker. Joanne, thanks for joining us. Your thoughts on it seems like deja vu all over again. They're coming back for another jab at us with the mRNA. What's your thoughts?
So much about this is about trust, isn't it? I mean, it's a very complex medicine, and how much do we trust them? Fauci wouldn't answer the questions in Parliament, in Congress. And, we had a study here in Australia called the Quovax study in Queensland that was supposed to be 5,000 or 10,000 people. They stopped it after 1 year. We never got the results from that. So, I'm frustrated that, it feels like we're not dealing with the trust situation. If they were so sure it was good and if it was so safe, why aren't they doing proper long-term studies? Now, they have done some studies on the latest influenza mRNA. And if people wanted to check Marianne Damasi's site, she's looked at some of the latest results coming from this one. But again, we see them doing odd things. They've got one study on 20,000 people getting the normal flu vaccine and 20,000 getting the new mRNA vaccine. And the results are that they claim it's 26% more effective, but when you look at the absolute risk, it's really less than 1% more helpful than a vaccine. It's not being compared against no vaccine at all, which, I would like to see that trial. And scarily, to me, the adverse reactions in this were quite large, and we're looking at 449 severe adverse effects to the 20,000 people who took the new vaccine, and 389 adverse effects in the normal flu vaccine. So we see that the severe adverse effects, and these are serious enough effects to be putting people in hospital, was higher, and yet they still approved it. So there are anomalies like this, and then to reduce the effect of the severe vaccines, they've pooled the study with some more studies, which they didn't do for efficacy. So we get those kind of contradictions. It seems a bit hypocritical to say, well, one study showed this, and then when we pool it with different studies, we see this. And it's kind of like, well, hey, so when we look at them straight up, and you'll see that on Marianne Damasi's site, there are questions about how effective this is, how useful it is, about these severe side effects. And she says they prevented 4 hospitalisations in the newer vax. I mean, how much? 449 severe adverse reactions, and we prevented 4 hospitalisations. The cost benefits here are highly questionable.
Tony, I'm just going to read you this. And as a lawyer, do you think you'd be able to look at probably buying a much bigger house or 10 houses? Let me read you this. Moderna's mRNA flu shot was approved on an accelerated basis, meaning the company only submitted preliminary short-term data. Now, the full study doesn't end until 2030, but they have the approval already. That's a few years a bit early. This surely, I mean, once there is one injury, there will be a number of injuries. Once there is one injury, doesn't that open the Pandora's box to litigation?
Well, yes and no, because here, if you recall, Dan Andrews said that was a hint to the rest of Australia to say that, the vaccine economy will be driving a lot of what happens. And if that happens, and if all the institutions get in line, then we have a case that I've discussed previously, which is institutional drift, because they need to comply with the direction of those who are making the laws. I think, as Marianne Damasi's done some great work over the years. I've known her for a while now, and she does break down a lot of the statistics. However, what I would like to point out, it appears to me that anyone that questions science is seen as anti-science. However, the very principle of science is question. It's about asking questions. It's about testing a hypothesis. It's about finding the null. It's about finding what is happening and asking that question. And we've seen so often through COVID, and now we're going to see here, is this case, well, if you ask a question, you're going against a consensus. Well, let's just be very frank here, and I don't care what anyone says, a consensus is not science. Science is about asking questions, and that's exactly how we progress. Moving on into the next phase, which is where you said we're on a short-term study. Well, that actually implies we are now testing it on human beings. That's what that really means. Let's be frank here. The clinical trial is you, and the precedent was set in COVID, and that's why I jumped up so early. Now, the very principle of that is this, is that in a clinical trial, you need participants who willingly come forward. Here we have a program, if you have a look at the National Immunisation Register, in which anyone that listened to my case in Kassam Hazard, yes, it was dismissed, but it was absolutely ridiculous because the representative of the Australian Immunisation Register, when he was asked in cross-examination, well, what do you mean by, a certain section of your affidavit? You know what it's remarkable. He said, I don't know, my lawyers wrote it. So this is an absolute disaster what we've been seeing in this country over this time. So when we look at clinical trials, we need active participants. But what I will indicate here is this. I have a plethora of research, and I just wrote a letter to the health minister and all senators around Australia. I think 2 senators responded, but Mark Butler, the health minister of Australia, he did. And the purpose of that letter was to say, what are you doing about the vaccine injured and bereaved or families of the deceased? And he came, and the reason being because we had an executive-based compensation scheme that ended in, I think it was September 2024. And I said, why don't you make it a statutory scheme that allows people to claim post that? Because you set the bar for compensation, and then you give it a finite timeline. The very executive that made the mandate is telling you how long you have to declare a compensation, but you also then need to come within the guidelines that is set by the executive, and they are denying more claims than they are accepting. Therefore, when you actually have a look at well over 140,000 registered adverse events, well, they're not registering as being a causation under the WHO guidelines, whereas the very WHO guidelines that I was referring to a moment ago superseded a coronial or a forensic pathologist report, which is the one I was speaking about. So here we have an executive setting the basis, setting the rules, and then overruling a judicial officer. That's a constitutional issue, and I raised that in my letter, and I find that to be a remarkable oversight by every institution. No one's talking about it. It's in my letter to all the senators all over Australia. No one's raised it. But one last point I want to raise, and it sort of ties on what Dr. Waters and Joe have been alluding to. I did a freedom of information on the Therapeutic Goods Administration last year about the hexavalent child vaccine. And I asked them, I said, can I get your studies that verify that this is safe and effective in children? They came back to me with one PDF link that came from Germany and said we were relying on sponsor data. Okay, so we're relying on sponsor data. Sponsor is the pharmaceutical company. And there's a PDF from Germany, and since then we've just rolled it out, and these kids in Australia have been told it's safe and effective. So what we do is we vaccinate en masse. If there's an adverse reaction, because it's hexavalent, look at it from a legal standpoint, and whether it's a medical or a legal standpoint, causation is so hard because they've mixed 6 injections in one. Which one was it that caused it, and what are the constituent ingredients of that one that may have caused that side effect? It is an absolute disaster, and kids are being experimented on.
Jared, Dr. Waters, sorry. FDA data, RIA, the analysis sent to Secretary Kennedy, finds Moderna's mRNA flu shot approval should be immediately withdrawn. And yet we see exactly the opposite. What gives?
Well, initially, everybody calls me Jerry. Even kids in my practice called me Jerry. I always feel more comfortable being called Jerry. I am Dr. Waters by officially. Again, just going back to something about what Joe and Tony are talking about. Remember that everything that, everybody outside of general practice talk about are on the basis of publications and papers and statistics. And that all in relation to, say, COVID and COVID deaths and COVID illnesses. It was a community illness. We as GPs are the only people who actually saw what was going on. And I was just looking up there, 4 editors-in-chiefs, or 5 or 6 editors-in-chiefs of the various medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet and that. All these people are coming out and saying that the papers and the studies aren't worth a damn. They mean nothing. The vast majority of them are corrupted. The vast majority of them are not reproducible. So we can't really talk in terms of, things of having any relevance. I know that during 2020 that what the GPs were reporting didn't represent what was going on the ground. Deaths, illnesses, cures, for the various interventions. At the end of the day, we are in a world of and people, you'd Pete McCullough on there. Pete's a great guy. I have great respect for him. I know him personally. I've sat across the table from him. Great guy. But at the end of the day, Pete is a cardiologist. And unless you were actually on the ground in 2020, seeing what was happening and seeing the lies that we as GPs were in effect returning to the epidemiologists and in turn the cardiologists, and that at the end of the day the whole thing is a lie. The whole system needs revamping, and you don't revamp it by putting the same people back in power or in authority that have ruined it over the last 40, 50 years, well, particularly the last 10 or 12 years. So at the end of the day, to talk about statistics and that is all very fine. They don't mean a damn. They're not worth it. And they are manipulated primarily by the people that are turning them out. Let's say these 6 editors-in-chiefs turn around and say, if I had the technological ability, I'd put it up on the screen, but I don't. But it's easily confirmed that the editors-in-chiefs of the medical journals say at least half the studies aren't worth a damn, and the other half are questionable. So, to talk about statistics in anything, it just doesn't wash it. It means nothing to me unless I see things with my own eyes and my own ears. It's hard to do, but most studies nowadays and most statistics are so manipulated and so lied that they mean nothing. Sorry again, going off on a rant, Mike.
That's okay. You're very welcome, by the way. Joanne, your turn to have a rant. Do you feel like nothing has changed, Joanne?
Well, Fauci, what else can I say? Fauci, where are the answers? Why is this man still able to say, I will not comment on Fifth Amendment? I mean, where is the justice in getting some answers? We know that he was aware that it may have been a bioweapon leak. We know the US has admitted they have 120 bioweapon labs around the world. Think about that. I mean, that's enormous. Why aren't we discussing this on the news and talking about the risk of playing these games, these gain of function tricks with viruses? And which also leads me to recent news talking about using artificial intelligence to change bacteriophages, which are viruses that infect bacteria. But if you can do it with them, you can do it with anything. And this is part of the reason people don't seem to understand there's a hell for leather race on in artificial intelligence, because a lot of cracking of the code of viruses, of the way our immune system responds to them, of the vaccines, of the antibodies, a lot of that is being crunched by artificial intelligence. And this is a race we don't want to be in, but we actually can't afford to lose. Because, if we're doing those kind of research, you can bet China's doing that kind of research, and 120 labs around the world are doing research. So it's a race we have to have. And again, when I come back to my rant thing, is the cheap energy. You can't run AI without cheap energy, and Australia is just crippling itself. But that's another topic. But just to get back to the viruses question, what could be quite scary coming out of these labs is an arms race of viruses. And given how badly we responded to the last one and how corrupt the system seems to be, it's a race. We really need to focus on what's going on. And yes, and I think ultimately, getting back to the vaccines question, my rant would be, I think that we should be looking at antivirals. And the antivirals are just the chemicals that seem to work to help our bodies fight these vaccines, allow us to get natural immunity. And when you've got natural immunity, especially with things like influenza, it can last up to 50 years. It can last a lifetime. So natural immunity is what we should be aiming for. And if we can get that with the help of antivirals, then I think we're crazy not to pursue that. Vaccines they're very ambitious. People don't seem to understand how finely tuned and complicated our immune system is, and that the reactions to these vaccines change over months. I mean, this latest those results I just quoted you were only for 6-month study on the reaction to the new mRNA influenza vaccine. And yet we saw with the Swedish study back in 2001 on 800,000 people that the reactions, their immune system changed up to 6 months to 8 months or 9 months later. They were getting negative reactions. So the vaccine was predisposing them to have a worse immune response to the virus than if they hadn't had the vaccine at all. So we need these long studies before we play with these games on our immune system. And it seems crazy to me that we don't have, and we're not even trying to get 5 and 10 year studies with good placebos, do it properly, but we can get results with antivirals so much quicker. And why are we not talking about them?
Yep. And Tony, as a lawyer, does it depress you that no one really has been held accountable? When we look at Fauci in the US, some are saying he may get a year in jail for not answering the questions, which is unusual because he is taking that, I think it's the Fifth Amendment, which he is allowed to do. So I'm not too sure how that can be a crime anyway. So he could actually walk out scot-free, walk off and have a very pleasant life, which would, you and I had this conversation years ago. How do we hold these people accountable? Because at the moment they are not, and they are developing and progressing and becoming even stronger.
Well, that's a double-pronged question, really, if you think about it, and I think it's a really good question, to be quite candid. On one sense, someone who is pardoned shouldn't need to plead the Fifth. It's certainly doesn't go hand in hand, and the privilege, according to case law in the USA, is that the pardon doesn't extend to someone who pleads the Fifth, or the Fifth doesn't extend to someone who's had a pardon. On the other hand, if you deny a pardon, you can plead the Fifth, and the privilege does extend, and that's in case law in the USA. So that's a little bit of trivia in that sense. However, what Fauci has disclosed is something that a lot of people have been discussing here in Australia. We've been running cases on that. It's on the case record. It's in documents. But one thing I will like to say here is this: is I sat with Senator Ron Johnson last September in the Senate Hart building over there in the USA in Washington, D.C., and I sat in the front row during one of the COVID inquiries there, and I want to thank everyone, Toby Rogers and those who are Aaron Siri and all those guys. We sat there together, and the issues with respect to that is, I know discussing this with Senator Johnson is this idea of a bioweapon. It is not a fanciful thing, because when it's created, and it's created in a lab, and we use this term called gain of function, which everyone is talking about, but everyone's forgotten about the seamless ligation. Seamless ligation is that aspect of where you can re-edit the DNA, and the best way I can put that in a very simplistic term is you've got a book, it's got chapters. You have the ability to get in there and cut certain pages out of those chapters and seamlessly put it together. So now when you look at it, the book reads as though it is one complete book with a flowing chapter, where in other words, what it really does, now when you send it into a lab, now you can give that a gain of function. Okay, now gain of function we can't say it's always used for bad things, because I'm sure it can be used for good things, but where it's used in a biological weapon status, that is something where we're actually gaining the function of something that can be used for malicious purposes. That, in my view, should be defined and come under the Bioweapons Treaty, and indeed be prosecuted by anyone irrespective of a pardon. What I will like to say is during the COVID period, we spoke about antivirals. Joe was talking about antivirals, and Dr. Waters. There was a dentist who was hospitalised here in New South Wales. I ran an urgent injunction on a public holiday before Justice Rothman. It wasn't reported, despite the fact of its significance. That injunction consisted of me going in there and bringing in some of the doctors. One of those was Professor Bhattacharya, by the way, and he was an expert in that case, and we did some affidavits. Essentially, this gentleman had been on a respirator for 3 months. He was given according to the emergency interventionist at St George Hospital, he was given between 4 to 48 hours to live. And so I said to the legal team and myself said to Justice Rothman. Well, we've got nothing to lose. The evidence of the interventionist, emergency interventionist, and we're not implying any wrongdoing here whatsoever, but the evidence was he's going to die, right? So let us bring our doctors in here and let us bring some alternative treatments and let's look at that treatment regime. Well, within 3 days or so, he was off the respirator. Did anyone talk about that? This is early in COVID. This guy is now alive. They invite me every couple of months. They invite me around the dinner table, and his wife and his daughter cry, and they say, the daughter's saying my father's here, and the wife is saying my husband's here only because you believed in this. But I didn't believe in something. I believed in science, and I believed that there were alternatives out there that, if given an opportunity and a chance, could save lives. And I sit there and I wonder, how is it that so many other people died on these respirators, not just here in Australia, but all around the world? That is a classic example, and as I guess scientists would call it anecdotal, but someone is alive as a result of that, and we didn't explore that. Now, Brian Tyson, in the case of Kassam, put in 5,994 frontline trauma clinical patient summaries. Out of that number, 4 people, I believe, had passed away. Half of them, of the 5,900, were vaccinated. Of that 5,994, the other half were unvaccinated. So what we said in the Kassam case was there is no difference between the vaccinated and unvaccinated, and this is frontline trauma at a time when people are saying, well, we don't know what was that. We knew what was happening. We knew what was working. It was being silenced. It was being censored. And there is the problem. Is it a case of mass corruption? Is it a case that all this censorship was planned? Is it a case that all these people have got together and said, well, how do we unify ourselves under this, follow the science, and that is the consensus? Because it's not science. That's not science. That's the GIGO principle, and that's garbage in will give you garbage out.
Yeah, thank you for that too. Jerry, Marty McCary resigned as FDA Commissioner in May 2026 after a rocky tenure, to say the least. Now, his exit followed public clashes and pressure over issues like flavoured vape approvals and policy decisions. Dr. Tracy Beth Hogue, the FDA's top drug regulator, was dismissed in May 2026 after declining to resign. This reflects a widening internal turmoil at the agency. It doesn't augur well for the future. What the hell is wrong with Kennedy and Trump?
Yeah, again, talking to the Americans and, chatting about this for the last week, nobody really knows. The fact of the matter is nobody knows. Everybody believes that both Trump and, the likes of Kennedy and Kirsty Noem and that these people have been sort of sidelined. They believe, as I say, again, it's all for going from person to person. They've got different beliefs, but overall, everybody believes that there is so much corruption and there's so much pressure being put on Trump and put on Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and various different people over there that it's they don't know exactly what the pressure is, but there's massive political, financial. Even, people are kind of saying they're afraid of being assassinated because if they could get to Charlie Kirk and that, it's all, there's a huge diversity of opinion in the States. The one thing I didn't hear over there was the 4 of us are sitting here and we can't talk about the heinous crime of COVID over the last 6 years without bringing in the United States. The reality of it is the United States was in effect the pivotal point, was the ground zero of COVID. And I didn't hear one American doctor, one American anybody apologising to the world for that. I'm a bit surprised that nobody is. I'm Irish, so I don't have to apologise. There again, us Irish, we don't apologise for anything, because we were right all the time. But Not one American had actually come and stood up on a stage and said, I'd like to apologise on behalf of the American state, the DARPA, the American State Department, or the medical profession. I've been hugely disappointed, none of them said, because they have to take responsibility for this massive crime. Getting back to, what was it all about? It was a pathogenic hoax. I, as a GP, knew with absolute certainty from February, March 2020, there was nothing in my community. I don't know about South Dakota. I don't know about any place, Tasmania or Australia or any place else. But I do know in Ireland, there was nothing there. I was ringing around my colleagues asking, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? Nothing. I got 100% success rate, cure rate, doing what I had done for the previous 40 years as a GP in interventions in viral infections. I did exactly what I'd done. No magic repurposed drugs, no need for them. I had not got one particularly sick patient. I had not got one dead patient. I had not got one admission to a hospital. And I had a busy practice, believe it or not. And talking to my colleagues, it just wasn't happening. It was a hoax. And based on the PCR, which, again, as Carrie Mullis said, it should not be screened. It was massively overcycled. The whole thing that we've lived through was a hoax. And in it, and then the whole point of it, we were talking about sort of flu and that. I don't know how many people actually die of flu. And as one of the 4 people who actually have written flu on a death cert, I know I hadn't a clue what I was writing. I hadn't an iota as to what a person died of. But if an elderly patient died in a nursing home and they kind of sniffled the night before, I put them down as a flu certification as a GP. And I know with absolute certainty that every one of my community doctor colleagues, GPs around the world, that's what we did. And in the absence of a death cert, we've no idea. So the question really is, what are we treating? Are there such a thing as flu deaths? I don't know. And as I say, I've been a GP for 40 years. If I don't know, how does anybody else know? And discussing with doctors, we have no idea. So the question really is, what are we trying to treat with any vaccine? What are we trying to treat with any antiviral? Now, I agree with Joe. Yeah, the road to go down would be to, you've got to identify what is causing problems. What is the pathogenicity of these things? And then zero in on antivirals that will prevent them. But that's not where the money is. The money, because I keep saying, and I said it a dozen times in the US last week, I said it 100 times, 85% of things get better in spite of us as a GP. And that's where it all starts. I don't care what anybody says. The hospital doctors only get in on it when we make a cock up or we can't diagnose or that. But it's a very, very small proportion of medicine. And the money primarily is administering things either to massive numbers of people or long-term, expensive drugs long-term. It's a very, very complex world. And the problem here is sitting, and as Tony and Joe mentioned things, my mind is spinning into in different directions, and that's why I shoot off on tangents, because it is so complex. But at the end of the day, the question has to be, how pathogenic, how likely is a disease state to cause death and injuries? It's massively inflated sometimes. As I say, I don't even know if people ever die of the flu, and then people start quoting the Spanish flu and that. Again, remember, back then, treatments were bloodletting and purges. There were no antibiotics for that, So all these things are totally distorted. Again, sorry about shooting off on a tangent, Mike. I know I didn't answer your question, or maybe I did. I don't even know what your question was, quite frankly.
But it was very interesting, I have to say, regardless what you're talking about. I've just got to ask you, Joanne.
Well, Mike, the idea is to try and lighten these things. Here in Ireland, this hour of the morning, we have to get up to a sort of a light and airy chat.
Well, you normally are up at the crack of midday. I know that.
Yeah.
Look, Joanne,
I like to get an early start at midday.
That's great. For an early opener. Alex Antic, Joanne, has already clashed with the TGA to find out more about the testing of the new vaccine. Tell me more. I mean, what's the problem with this? Because again, he's walking in, again, it's like deja vu, walking into a brick wall, brick wall, brick wall. And then after that, I want to talk to Tony about the bird flu, because I think here we have the mRNA going everywhere. It's going to be used for everything, even in your jelly. Joanne, tell me about Alex Antic and why he's having so much trouble getting information from the TGA.
Well, there a study showing the TGA, I think, was getting 96% of its funding from via the pharmaceutical companies, in the sense that it was the pharmaceutical companies funding the studies that the TGA was quoting and talking about. And we saw in 2001 the TGA banned ivermectin and did that on the basis that if it was available, people were choosing not to get the vaccine. My problem with this is free agents. We should be able to choose the medicine, which our doctors should be free to speak. And, so the TGA seems to not be choosing the things that we would like it to be assessing. And there's very little focus on the TGA, which, I feel is a real shame, because to me that was always crazy logic to ban essentially safe treatments, because people may choose not to get the vaccine if they felt they had a safe treatment. Again, we come back to vitamin D and the fact that we've known for years that this helps in these kind of infections. It's intrinsically very safe, and yet again, we didn't have clinics in car parks to hand out free bottles of vitamin D, but we had clinics in car parks to hand out vaccines for free, which obviously we're all paying for some other way. And, my frustration is we should be looking at these natural treatments always and first, and vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies, and getting to those and solving those before we start subsidising the big money, expensive and not long studied drugs. So, good on Alex Antic for asking the questions that should have been asked by most of our media way back 4 or 5 years ago. So, yes, I'm frustrated too. And so glad that some of our elected representatives are asking the questions. And I mean, on the other topic, in terms of the flu, I'll say people may not want to hear, but in Australia, my experience, unlike Jerry's, I had no direct experience with the virus at all for nearly 2 years. Here in Western Australia, we just shut the borders. We had no disease. We didn't need the lockdowns. We didn't need the masks, and we didn't need the vaccines, although they did force them on us in the end anyway, because there was no virus. And my solution would have been just to stop the virus getting out of China, stop the flights, leave all bioweapons in the place that leaked them, and don't let them into your country as the best way to deal with these issues until you know more. And so I'm a bit of a hard borders girl. When we look at the data, and all this data needs to be questioned, but we look at the data in Australia, and the death rate from influenza was COVID was an extraordinary 3% in that first year, which is unbelievably big and probably exaggerated because it mostly seemed to hit nursing homes. But again, the PCR test, which was overdone in so many countries and overcycled, here in Australia, we got down to one positive result for every 3,000 to 5,000 tests. So we had the opposite problem. We were throwing buckets of money at testing and hardly getting any positive results. So they weren't overcycling here, and we could be sure of the cases at least had the virus. But, again, so difficult to know how to interpret this, except I do think that the initial version of that SARS virus was quite dangerous. And of course, by the time Omicron came, we saw it was very different. But and to Jerry's effect, yes, we didn't see anyone here get sick because there was no virus here at all. But just to put the other angle through, hard borders. And I think that's a side that we could talk about that too. I think it's a very useful reaction when it's a bioweapon, which may have long-term health effects, unfortunately, which may take decades to unfold. If we are fighting the Third World War with bioweapons, I think we need to get a smart reaction to the threat of bioweapons before they become more of a problem.
And how will they control it if they're not going to be able to control it? I've got to ask you, Tony, because we're all familiar in Australia with bird flu, and I've seen a few seagulls with masks and everything flying around, not very well, of course, but I'm making light of it. But we're jabbing, and we're going to jab so many, for example, penguins, and we are attacking the wildlife with no care at all. We can't do that, can we? We cannot. We should not be doing that. Jabbing these poor the fairy the penguins from from Phillip Island or whatever. Peter McCullough we had on recently, and we're talking about the bird flu, and he said, "Well, have they ever thought about natural immunity?" and which is true. And they and now Peter's come out and said that he thinks it was a lab leak of some sort. What's your thoughts on the Australian government, Tony, doing what it can to jab all those fine feathered creatures, and especially the penguins, these beautiful little birds that have got no say, so they have to be jabbed twice. First jab and then second jab 2 weeks later. That's their booster. I wonder if they have to roll up for another one. How do we stop it? You're a lawyer.
Well, to file an injunction or something of that nature, these guys have gone, they're just maniacs, okay? Like I said, it's the vaccine economy, right? Firstly, I don't know how they're going to get informed consent. That, unless you go bok bok and that constitutes, and then bok bok bok, that's your second issue that you've got to be. I really think that Australians need to understand, not just Australians, but everyone around the world needs to understand that when we're working in a heavily influenced market that has these competing economic issues, then you can understand why. And I wrote about it in my book chapter of 2014 in the International Handbook of Whistleblower Research. And I know I've mentioned it on the show before, but it focused on 3 key areas. That was defence, renewable energy, and pharmaceuticals. And taxpayers subsidise each and every one of those sectors. And so when you have a look at what the taxpayer funds, well, think about this. One of the most lucrative markets in the world is tapping into a subsidy base of a taxpayer. Okay, it is lucrative. And how do I do that? Well, I create panic, I create fear. Now I can get the taxpayer to subsidise what's happening. So when something doesn't work, and this is what I've been trying to pass since 2014, 2012, when I was with the ANU, Australian National University, at Faculty of Law and Medicine with the late Professor Faunce. He was such a lovely man. We were talking about nanotechnologies and that all the way back then. But the key question is this: okay, if something goes wrong, how does the taxpayer, how is it compensated? So if I say this is going to reduce the death rate or severe infection by X, A, how do you measure that? Number one. And number two, if it doesn't achieve what its milestone is that was presented to the population with respect to the level of subsidies, and it's in the billions. It depends on what country, and it could be in the hundreds of billions or even $1 trillion. But the point I'm trying to make is this, is that when it goes wrong, what's happening? And so here we see a vaccine economy now taking over every aspect. So you've got the cows, you got the remember the Hendra virus that was coming around? They had the horses. They've got the penguins and the birds now. And look, good luck in catching all the birds. That was perhaps a bridge too far on their part. But when you find economies are involved, you're not looking at safety, you're not looking at public health, because remember, it did not stop transmission. That was confirmed in my case before anyone talked about it all over the world. You had all these people coming around, and the state expert, Professor McCartney, said it's not stopping transmission. Therefore, it can't confer immunity. It didn't stop the hospitalisations, and it didn't stop the deaths. So how is it measurable for a taxpayer to get value for money in these circumstances? I've put this bill to every senator in Australia. I think only 1 or 2 have responded to that, thinking, wow, this could be an idea, because remember, it's the taxpayer, regardless of Irish or you are, it's the taxpayer who's paying. It's not the government, because the government doesn't have any money. It's our money, and they live extravagantly with it, and they're spending it on these projects. When you have a look at what Peter McCullough said, he's a great guy. I spent a few days with him over there in Texas. But I think at the end of the day, when you actually have a look at it, the way we're progressing, we need to understand, as Dr. Jerry Waters and Joe have indicated, this idea of natural immunity and allowing the body is a fantastic mechanism at fighting for survival. It is one of the best mechanisms we got. And as Jerry, I think, I really didn't know what until Jerry said it a moment ago, like 80% of what we do, we can actually fight ourselves. And I totally agree with that. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't qualify that, and Jerry is, so thank you, Jerry. But one of the other aspects of this is when those doctors were coming out, they were being deregistered. And I still represent doctors here in Australia who they wanted to deregister temporarily, and it goes on for years. And I find that to be heinous, because all they're doing is calling out a public health issue, and they've got a right to a voice. And that is something that the vaccine economy comes into, because they're impeding in that sale process.
I feel like I'm living in a Stephen King novel still. And we actually started with TNT at the height of this barbaric approach to human life and now animal life. We do have to wrap it up very shortly. So, Jerry, your final thoughts, where to from now, and where are we going to end up?
Well, my final thoughts are, as I said, and as Tony recounted, 85% of things that we as GPs are presented with get better in spite of us, not because of us, in spite of us. So, we've got, if we go along with that premise, that if people were just left alone, and I firmly believe that I don't think there was a pathogen there of any relevance at all. And I was in Finland a while ago. I've been all over the place. I'm traveling around at my own expense, mind you, to just talk to people. Where do we go from? Unless we can reform, in effect, the media, the mass media are the core to it. And that's where the panic is induced. That's where the directions are pushed. And unless we can actually get some honest assessment of, again, I come back to the pathogenicity of anything. Is it killing birds? Is it killing seagulls? Is it killing penguins? Did it kill people? I don't believe that COVID, and I say I will call in my 50 years in medicine, but my 40 years in general practice, that there was no pathogen of any relevance during 2020. And I have discussed it with Pete McCullough. I have discussed it with Angus Dalgleish. I've discussed it with lots of people, and Weinberg, what's his name? Yeah, what I say is, it's very important. We can't go forward unless we accept the mistakes of the past. And the mistakes of the past were big money are making bigger money out of terrifying people into panicking into various states. And that's what it's about, the media.
Joanne, final thoughts, and where to from here, and where do we end up, like the bird? Like chicken, maybe.
It is crazy that we're considering protecting wildlife from disease by doing mass vaccination programs, especially endangered wildlife. Any wildlife, we don't know what the long-term effects of those are going to be.
But that ain't true, that ain't true what the long-term effects are.
I just dread to think what might happen and what might result from this. Infections that they would always have come across new pandemics, H5N1, just different variants of influenza, and we need those survivors to survive. It is an information war, as Jerry said, and I think the most important thing people should leave this conversation with and remember is we need to shore up our lines of communication. They win every time a propaganda story goes unquestioned, goes unremarked, and spreads. And obviously it's very hard to get our message out, but every person we tell, every message we send, it helps to spread the word that there is another side to the story. It helps to open people's eyes to the fact that the media is feeding them a very one-sided loop. And so information is our friend. So everything we can do to get the word out. Thank you, Mike. Is a great thing.
Thank you. And Tony Nicolig, as always, you have the final say. The courtroom is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, I think at the end of the day, I think Jerry and Joe have eloquently stated the mission really is information. Unfortunately, during that course, that information network, again, if you have a look at who owns a lot of these information networks, it goes back to the vaccine economy. The vaccine economy isn't only about making money, it's about the investments in infrastructure. And they are crucial aspects. I think at the end of the day, we need to start looking at what can we do to shore up our communication lines. Importantly is to push for accountability, but that's not going to come without transparency. And hence, in the shadows, there are files. We need to get those files so we can bring accountability. That's not about retribution or revenge. It's about bringing science to the forefront of what it used to be. Now, working into the future from there, we then also need to start looking at how do we shore up the scientific journal side of things, where a lot of the editors from the scientific journals themselves have indicated almost 50% of the material coming out of the journals, the scientific peer-reviewed journals, can't be verified. So, at what point are we looking at a state of transparency and a state of illusion, or this illusory science where they say let's follow the science? And as Scott Morrison stated during 2022 in May, he said that no one has died of COVID, but with COVID. And he said all the states know this. So there it is. There is a very big difference. That was in my letter to Brad Hazzard, the 7th of July 2021, that went out to all Australian ministers and senators. The next point from there, Mike, I think my next point is a cigar, scotch or a wine. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the ride. It's a shit show out there. Let's enjoy it while it's here.
Well, I like the idea, not the cigar because I will die, but good whiskey, Lapthrog. Jerry, would you recommend a Lapthrog? And if you do, that's great news. If you don't, I'm not taking any notice of you. But if
you're ignoring me anyway, Mike.
But what if somebody wants to find out more about you besides you buying the next round of Lapthrog?
Oh well, hold on. I've been suspended by the medical council. I've no earning potential, so I will have to sponge off the rest of you. I've spent my life sponging off people, but I'm on Twitter. I've got 56,000 followers on Twitter, and it's Dr. Gerard Waters, O'Tourish, Oturisk, and. That's where if you want to find out about the rubbish that I talk about, or the rubbish that I spew out, that's where you can find me.
It's not spewing, it's actually very valuable. And I thank you for your time. Joanne, author, blogger, speaker. First of all, would you recommend a whiskey? And secondly, how do they find out more about you?
Oh, look, I'm a dark chocolate girl, so that's the answer to everything. And not 42, dark chocolate. I blog at joannenova.com.au. So you just Google Jo Nova, you'll find me and all the people who hate me, and live off donations, and have done for 18 years now. It's the underworld of science, commenting on the things that are not popular, not fashionable, and happy to get questions from anyone on the blog.
Thank you so much, and we must do that again too. I appreciate your time. And Tony Nikolic, you mentioned Scotch. What sort of whiskey are we drinking tonight?
A nice from the Spey River single malt. That's what I'm thinking. But it might be a red wine. It might be a nice Pinot Noir. So I'm still to decide on that one. But again, it's just to wind down after a big week. I don't usually drink, but after a big week, I don't mind that.
Except at breakfast. What about
only on days that end in Y? I won't drink any other day.
Good on you, Tony. Love you forever. Dr. Jerry Waters, Tony Nikolic and Joanne Nova, thank you so much for being part of the protagonists. And that's about it for me for the week. Short week, but it feels like a very long one because we're doing all the work behind the scenes. And the new look for the Pulse. Hope you appreciate it. It's been a fantastic journey. And I sort of feel that we're coming back anyway. Head down, backside up, as they would say, and just watch out for the doctor with those gloves when you bend over. Have a great weekend. There's Jerry. That's right. Look, I'm not going to go there at all. That's it. I will catch you again on Monday. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. This has been The Pulse, and this is The Protagonist.
The common housefly, caught in the clutches of the spider's web. Every move it makes just makes matters worse. Then, dinner time.
Feast on the captivating stories, videos, and helpful information on our website.
Whoa.
Dinner's ready.
Oh, man.
Escape is futile.
Just one more video.
Get stuck in our web
at thepulse.today.